Welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. Pardon my darting about. I was trying to make sure the red light was on. Madam Clerk, I understand we have no regrets this evening. We're all here. Council, I understand there might be a declaration of pecuniary interest here. Councilor McNeice?
Thank you. Through your worship, I'd just like to declare a conflict on 7.1, the 2024 Heritage Grant Program recommendations. As my wife and I applied for the 2024 Heritage Grant, and our primary residence is a Part 4 designated heritage project, so we have a financial interest in the grant funds dispersed. So I've declared a conflict at the Heritage Committee and notified the Integrity Commissioner as well.
Thank you. Have you filed the requisite form with the clerk?
Yes, I've submitted it to both clerks.
Perfect. Then
Thank you.
You've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Councilor Adams?
Thanks very much. I just wanted to clarify that I will not be declaring an interest in item 6.1 this evening as I had at the previous March 4th meeting. I've since had the opportunity to review the matter with the Integrity Officer and receive advice from the Integrity Officer on the matter, and as a result, my interests don't require me to declare an interest.
Thank you, Councillor. Would someone move and someone second resolving into Committee of the Whole? Councillor Longo and Councillor McNeice, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries, and we are now in the Committee of the Whole session. Council, we have no consent items, but we do have two confidential consent items. And I either need a motion to adopt them as presented or a motion to go into closed session to discuss them. Councillor Chisholm.
I move approval.
Thank you, Councillor. Any objection? There being none, that carries. Thank you very much, Councillor. That brings us to item 5.1, the appeal to the Ontario, we just did item 5.1, excuse me. Got to turn 2 pages. That brings us to the event that I think brought most of us here tonight, which is the public hearing item on the public meeting and recommendation report for the town-initiated official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, or as it might be more commonly known, the 4 units as of right and the Sheridan College housing area 4-story apartments. And if you're watching the live stream of this meeting on oakville.ca and you wish to speak to this item, please call 905-815-6095 so that we can connect you to the meeting, and you'll be called upon to speak following the registered delegations. We have a few. After we've heard the delegations, I am going to be speaking about the matter before the rest of council, and then we'll hear from the rest of the council. And I'm going to be moving a motion that says that the comments from the public with respect to the town-initiated official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments be received. That's just a pure housekeeping matter. It's a normal thing to do. And second, that council pass the town-initiated official plan amendments and refuse the zoning bylaw amendments that are provided in the report, public meeting and recommendation report, town-initiated official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, 4 units as of right and Sheridan College housing area. In addition to that, I've been made aware that Councillor Adams will be moving an amendment to that to add a 3rd point having to do with creating a task force to work with Sheridan College to encourage them to increase student housing on their property. So that lays out for you the course of the evening. We look forward to your comments. I always hold out the possibility that I try always to have a corner of my mind open. If someone will persuade me that we ought to accept and pass the zoning bylaw amendments, I could listen to that. But for the reasons that I'm planning to make clear, as it stands now, I can't support those. I want to explain that the town-initiated official plan amendments do not do anything about 4 as of right or 4-story apartments. What they do is conform our official plan, as we must, to the provincial legislation that gives every property owner the right to have up to 3 dwelling units on their property. Whether we conform our official plan to that or not, it is the law, and in any court proceeding, it doesn't stop it by not having it in our official plan, and it's not that pretty to have your official plan be out of sync with the law of the land. So I hope that lays the course of the evening out for you, and I would invite the clerk now to call the first of our many delegations. Councillor Duddick?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a point of clarification. The modification or the addition, I thought was a collective work between wards 5 and 6, namely Councillors Noel and Grant. Is that not correct?
That may very well be. In whatever coin tossing they may have done, Councillor Adams wound up being the mover. And as chair, I try not to interfere.
Okay, I was just wanting to give some of the audience the benefit of the workmanship behind the scenes, that's all.
It's true that the councillors from 5 and 6 are well acquainted with each other, and they know how to work together. Madam Clerk, may I ask you to call the first delegation?
Our first delegation is Matthias De Silva.
Mr. De Silva, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Hello, there we go. Hi there, how is everybody tonight? Hope everybody is doing great. And yeah, so I apologize, it's gonna be a little bit of a lengthy presentation, so I hope that I can keep everybody engaged. Right, so some concerns regarding fourplexes, right? So if I can please get the next slide. Yeah. Of course, the visual impact on neighborhoods, the clash with the existing character of the neighborhood, right? If there's only a certain type of housing, tall and distracting structures, shadows and obstruction of sunlight, and sometimes other buildings cannot be aesthetically pleasing. Can we please get the next slide? Thank you. Can I get the next slide? Thank you very much. I am kidding. Please go back to our last slide, if that's okay. Yes. That's a fourplex in Vancouver. Looks very pleasant and very cozy. I would love to live there. Now, on to my actual delegation. I apologize for that unfunny joke. So, Council, I am incredibly excited for us to be in a situation where we can make such an impactful decision that will bring countless benefits to Oakville and its residents. The Fours of Right and Sheridan Housing Sheridan Housing Area Bylaw will bring forth some wonderful changes. A couple of advantages being more homes for Oakville residents while assisting with affordability and supply, a more robust and complete environment around Sheridan College for students, tightly connected neighborhoods with a sense of place and community, sustainable developments with a lower carbon footprint and integration with the town's transportation master plan, ease on traffic congestion by allowing residents to live closer to their work, school, other general amenities, as well as transit facility, lowering overall trips taken by car, significantly improved land use, meaning more efficient utilization of public funds, more economically profitable mixed-use areas for the town, and most importantly, some actual action being taken by our officials regarding options for the younger generation of Oakville residents and those who currently cannot afford a home. A few weeks ago, during a Midtown meeting, it became very clear that citizens in council did not particularly enjoy the idea of skyscrapers and tall buildings in Oakville. Towers are very common in the GTHA because many municipalities like Oakville use exclusionary zoning, which strictly limits the diversity and density of housing types that can actually be built. Most land is solely dedicated to single-family dwellings, like single-family detached homes and townhouses, which are very space inefficient and costly. while multiplexes and low-rises are mostly ignored and rarely built only after months and months of back and forth, like if we don't pass Forza right tonight. This causes the supply of homes to largely fall behind demand and development targets, meaning that whenever an area like Midtown is upzoned, we end up with super tall buildings to play catch up. If we truly dislike having tall buildings in our town, this bylaw is an exquisite opportunity to move forward with more spread out, gentle density that will allow Oakville to grow naturally and organically, making it more livable, inclusive, and diverse, and most importantly, facilitating these developments instead of locking it behind multiple months of back and forth. Again, during a Midtown meeting, council was presented with Copenhagen-style density and praised it significantly. Despite this praise, Oakville has not whatsoever tried to actually replicate what Copenhagen does to achieve such a livable environment with gentle density citywide. Oakville's population density is roughly 1,500 people per square kilometer, while Copenhagen's is almost 7,000. This number is achieved without impacting quality of life and livability by allowing a wide range of housing types and densities to be built across the city. In fact, multiplexes and low-rises are the most common types of housing across Copenhagen, providing more options and cost diversity. If council truly meant what they said and care about gentle density and want to be more like Copenhagen, this bylaw is not only necessary, but only the first of a plethora of steps that Oakville needs to take to achieve the low footprint and gentle density of Copenhagen. As someone who graduated from Sheridan College, me and my friends are quite familiar with the area around the facility and how difficult it can be as a student to find places to reside. And while depending on the college itself to provide housing and other amenities, it is also the town's responsibility to make sure that the students' well-being and health is maintained. The Sheridan housing area section of this bylaw will be incredibly beneficial for not only Sheridan students, but also all other Oakville residents looking for more options when it comes to housing. Key word there is options. As mentioned previously, providing a wider range of housing types and cost rates is incredibly helpful since it gives people more options, right? Students that currently are barely scraping by with their roommates trying to afford a townhouse uptown and have to either drive or take the bus down to Sheridan, guess what? Now, they could get a small apartment in a 4-story building by the college instead of having to barely get by, right? Allowing students to live closer to Sheridan will also alleviate traffic congestion by making walking, cycling, and transit more viable options. This bylaw is an incredible way to improve our students' lives and well-being while also providing other Oakville residents with more housing options. If council truly cares about Sheridan College students, those that are desperately searching for a home, you will pass this bylaw tonight. So wait a minute. You're telling me that we get to pass an extremely positive, beneficial bylaw that will only encourage valuable changes that ultimately improves the quality of life of students, young adults, newcomers, struggling residents, and the elderly, and while we're doing such a thing, we're getting money for it? Oh man, all right, count me in, right? This is the type of bylaw that we should have implemented years ago, and now we get to do it and get cash. It's such an easy decision. On a more serious note, and jokes aside, middle density is a good thing for everyone. Kids get to live closer to their loved ones. I don't want to live with my parents in Oakville and go somewhere up north. Young couples can start a life earlier and build their households. I've been with my girlfriend for almost a decade now, and we're nowhere close to getting our own place, even though we both have full-time jobs. Students get to choose and have the upper hand when it comes to their education. Elders have the ability to live close to the necessary amenities in the place they spend their whole lives in and building. Those struggling can get a better chance at finding a roommate. It gives people options town-wise instead of forcing them to settle for either a completely unattainable single-family home or a premium condo at the edge of town. It brings people together instead of pushing them away. It revitalizes our neighborhoods instead of willfully ignoring them. By pushing the housing crisis away and pretending like it doesn't exist, Oakville is neglecting its own residents who have shaped and will shape its community. Council, pass this bylaw. To vote against Forest of Right is to vote against housing. To vote against housing is to vote against students, elderly, young adults, and those who are currently struggling. If council cares about the health and well-being of Oakville's future, yet emerging and struggling residents, then you will pass the Forest of Right and Sheridan Housing Area bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Mateus, for your information. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Our next delegation is Derek Zapp.
Welcome, sir. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councilors, it's great to see you all. Presentation? Okay, next slide. Okay, so a quick agenda on what I'll be covering today. I'll do a quick introduction. I'll talk about the crises of today, mostly the housing one. I'll talk about some of the numbers, but we'll also offer innovative and alternatives, and then follow it up with a conclusion. Next slide, please. So you probably may remember the name back on March the 4th. Part of the reason I'm here. Could not get through 3 or 4 times. So if you look at the little picture in the middle, I finally got a call from the council. I have aged in the last 2 months since hearing about this. If you want to know a little bit about myself, the gentleman on the left came here. It's pictured on my shirt. I'm a lifelong resident because of him. I'm a student, a teammate, a local businessman, a son, a father, a sibling, a neighbor, and a voter, and a coach. What have I learned? I've learned from my father a few things. The greatest gift we can give to one another is our time. Listen to understand. You have 2 ears for a reason and 1 mouth. Focus on the situation, not individuals. Not I and you, we, us, team. Know what you don't know. Then learn, ask questions until you do know. Don't assume or gamble. Use the KISS approach. And for me as a son, it was keep it simple, silly. You may have known another S. The definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Act strategically, keep your promises, and get the right solution, and I add for Oakville. And a life's mantra is carpe diem, seize the day, make your life extraordinary. Next slide, please. So taking a look at today's crisis, I've listed a number of them. I won't go through all of them, but the first 3 have to do with the climate, the water, the plastic. If only, Sean, there was one company that could help us deal with all these 3. Maybe you could come visit it. That's an inside joke. We also have a productivity crisis. Today, per capita in Canada, we are falling behind all our competition and we are not investing in our future. That leads us to the housing crisis. We created this mostly by our own choices, by increasing record demand and not addressing supply for 7 of the 10 years. And now at the last minute, we're trying to buy our way out of this situation through rushed, non-strategic actions using billions of tax dollars and extending the time to balance the budget. And I'll allude to why that is important in the next slide. Next slide, please. Just some numbers, being a finance guy. Public consultation prior to the emergency January half submission, I believe was almost 0, from what we heard from the council's meters on the January meeting and March the 4th. Consultation with Sheridan also was mentioned by council to be next to 0. There were some, but not enough. The number of councillors who volunteered their neighborhood and 800 meters around for 4 of us right, or 4 high apartments was 0, right? This isn't NIMBY. Nobody necessarily wants this. So how do we, so when I offered this at the last council, I had asked if anyone had wanted this in their zone. There was no takers. The number of councillors accepting a tour of the company that I work for in Oakville that is leading an ecological transformation and discuss half was 1. I encourage you to learn more about this company and what we're doing. The amount of the public was told that would cost to cancel the Oakville, Mississauga gas-fired power plants was $120 million. It cost $1.2 billion. The The payroll system costs 2.4. We have to use our money efficiently. The number of alumni and teachers at the QEP grad reunion, that's a shout out to my friends, there was over 1,000. This is a great place to live. Great ideas. Please reach out when you have questions. 1.2 million people are out of work in Canada. Are out of work, and there's only 650,000 jobs. That's matching supply and demand. From an immigration perspective, we need to bring people in who can build these houses. That's part of the problem. We're not bringing in people that can build the actual houses. The number of foreign students has increased to 1.5 million. Their tuitions are double, with minimal to no money spent on housing. The number of students living in one Brampton basement apartment was 16, if you recall reading in the news. Okay, students at WLU, where I went to school, 279 State Street for the homecoming, over 200 in a backyard that was 20 by about 50. You got to be careful about what we do and how we situate ourselves and how we build our town. The amount the town paid Ward 6 residents for the flood and damages cost from the construction of Road 7, as reported in Oakville News, $300,000 to the town, $1 million was paid by Halton Total. The amount of interest on the national debt, $35 billion, and we keep delaying balancing the budget by spending more and more. Balancing the budget allows for more options to spend money and provide more money in the future. Oakville's ranking as best places to live in Canada in 2018 with our existing strategic plan was #1. In 2023, we have fallen to 29, behind Burlington and Pickering, with many behind us, not far behind us. The amount of money Windsor turned down from half, $70 million, in order to protect the rights and the neighborhoods of its citizens. The number of half applicants, 544, only 179 accepted after a few withdrawals and other rejections. The number of people who attended the Sheridan Open House, had a family who lived in Copenhagen, called friends who lived in Copenhagen, and read the official plan. We keep talking about Copenhagen and understand, and they're making assumptions about Copenhagen. I think there's only one person in this room who's done all those things. So you don't have to read, you have to make sure you check your facts. The number of elected officials who campaigned on some of these matters. When we got into the I don't believe there was any. But many, many talked about the plan, the 2013, the 2018 strategic plans about livability and how great a place Oakville was. And many of those, there was a gentleman who talked about finding anything on the internet. The 2013 plan talked all about the development and the types of things you do in neighborhoods and houses in terms of expansion. It was a great plan. That's what led us to be #1. Now we're heading the other direction. Then with regards to the $25 million half fund, let's talk about the real money, right? It's the net money. When you divide it over the 4 years, you take into consideration the costs, the overtime, the legal costs, the consultants, the paperwork, the staff, the cost of borrowing, the time value of money, and you divide that into the growing budget, it's next to nothing, unfortunately. So this money that we talk about isn't a whole lot after you take into consideration. That doesn't even talk about any studies that need to be done with regards to flooding and zoning. Next slide, please. Some innovative alternatives. I have a few friends who'll speak more on this, so I won't take up too much time on this. But you take a look on the far right there, and you're looking at a gentleman who changed the size of bathroom tissue in the US. We were going to talk about making Oakville great again, but we didn't like the picture on the guy that we had there. So we opted not to, but we changed it by 0.1 of an inch. And what we were able to do is get one extra layer in the truck, get 17% more tissue delivered throughout North America. I've also had the good fortune of working for a company that turned brick-sized telephones into Star Trek communication lights. There are brilliant people all around. All you have to do is ask, whether you put new committees together, Tom, on Sheridan, or anything else. There's great ideas out there. Just ask if you need help. You can take a look at what's happening in Waterloo. They just went to the, I think it's the OLT tribunal, and they talked about their midtown. And you wanted to know about the numbers of the books of other developers. I had a roommate who ended up being the head of rental property. They will tell you bigger is better. And even though Midtown, we're trying to get it down, they're going to push you up. Be ready for it. And now they overrode the sizes that the town put forth, and the developers have won. There's also an example of a gentleman who's building a bunker with 3-story in a neighborhood that I loved. It was 100 meters when I lived in Waterloo shortly. He's building bunkers and tunnels and everything else, and he's putting neighbor against neighbor. Then you have Copenhagen. Do you put it down on the Sheridan homes or on the available land? And Canada, my goodness, there's got to be some place. How are we having a housing crisis, the second largest country in Canada? Cochrane's given away 1,500 pieces of property for $10 each, right? There's places for us to build. We don't have to build it all in one spot. Talk about just a few quick innovative ideas. You know, use what you have first. Building lot, homes, existing footprints are the best solutions for the carbon footprint. Using the existing 3-for right, finding ways to encourage that. Converting office buildings, but there's more on that. I'll let others speak on that we'll speak later. There's new ideas. The students want homes and stuff like that. All these 4 high, they're not going to be affordable. You need elevators, you need safety, you need flood, you need zone. It will not be affordable. You can look into teeny homes, container homes, co-homes, shared homes. Brampton shares different properties. Next one, private equity. There's a whole bunch of private equity. And then going to the final slide, I just want to say in conclusion, the greatest gift is your time. So thank you for listening and taking your time. Listening to understand, knowing what you don't know. Don't assume, gamble with our town, keep it simple. Act strategically, keeping your promises, and get the right solution to Oakville, and stop reversing the trend of Oakville and make it the most livable town once again.
Thank you, Mr. Zapp. Councillor Hazlitt-Deal.
Thank you for your delegation. I just want to clarify, in terms of the Midtown and your comments on Midtown.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing. We've done a lot of research on Waterloo and a variety of others. Just as I wouldn't want any neighborhood to have an environment that is not livable, would you concur that it's not fair for new residents arriving in Midtown to have a less than livable community?
Yeah, I would agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Zapp. Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please.
Dan Pastrick.
Mr. Pastrick, welcome. Council looks forward to your information. Please try to keep it in the 10 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Dan Pastorik, and I have been a resident for 42 years in Oakville. Next slide, please. Tonight's decision defines your legacy as well as the character of Oakville forever. Next slide, please. First, I'd like to address the councillors voting no today, which seems to be the way it's going to go from the preamble. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to the people who sent in the signed petitions. Thank you for the ones who read the emails in opposition. Over the last 2 months, there have been many comments forwarded on this subject. 2 comments stood out for me. First, that these proposals will dramatically change the character of Oakville. I truly believe this. The second is that Oakville has done its fair share. The second comment I needed to understand better. In Halton's 2022 State of Housing Report, Oakville's growth is shown at 10% over 5 years, double that of the GTHA, and Ontario. Also that Oakville contributed 58% of all housing units in Halton. In addition, Oakville has already pledged to build 33,000 homes over the next 10 years, which is a great achievement. Town staff have indicated in a prior meeting that approximately 40,000 homes are already in the process. Therefore, I believe Oakville is doing its fair share and doing much more. During the past few weeks, Premier Ford came out and said, this government is ruling out Ontario-wide fourplex policy, and went on to say, if anybody did it, it was a massive mistake. In addition, he went on to say, we are not going into communities and building 4-story apartment buildings right next door to residential homes. I'm glad he's listening. I believe there are better solutions that can be bought. Also, a single-family home is not an evil thing. Next slide, please. No one can say that Oakville isn't doing its part. We've been doing more than our fair share. However, I don't understand why we have to look like Mississauga or Brampton in finding a solution. Also, the lack of due diligence surrounding this deal concerns me. There doesn't seem to be any public records of impact studies commenting on environment, congestion, traffic, crime. There's no sensitivity studies on how the town's infrastructure is going to handle the new water needs, electricity needs, and sewer needs to accomplish the future growth in population. And I won't get into the survey, which I have quite a number of issues about. It doesn't follow opinion research standards. However, I'd like to touch on one point regarding the survey. The survey missed to have an illustration of a 4-story apartment building right beside a resident. This would help homeowners understand what the town's vision was surrounding Sheridan College. Next slide, please. A week or two ago, the town posted a photograph of what was possible around Sheridan College. Illustrative purposes only. I must say my first impression was, wow. It was a nice photograph, and I hope that is the possible. Very different than the photograph on the right on my slide, which I believe is the more probable scenario. The town's photograph shows no parking issues, no garbage issues, no traffic congestion issues, no student ghetto, which exists around most colleges and universities. Frankly, there's no loss of privacy by tenants looking down from their balcony into your backyard while you and your family sit there having a barbecue. I understand this was for illustrative purposes of the possible. I was curious, were these apartments built near universities? Next slide, please. Unfortunately not. The photograph is of a luxury apartment complex built in Charlotte, North Carolina. 225 units, land approximately the size of Sheridan's vacant parking lots. So frankly, I thought the town got it right. Building this type of apartment complex on Sheridan lands is a great idea. Alternatives need to be explored, and I'm eager to hear more of the details tonight and leave the surrounding community alone. Next slide, please. After reviewing the town's posted documents, I'm not exactly clear what the terms and conditions of this deal are. On one side, the money side, it was 36 million, then it was 25. I think there was a range at one point stated, and now I can't find the dollar figure in the final recommendation report. I might have missed it. It was a lot of pages. On the give side, I clearly see that. It's enormous and forever. We give up our right to question, comment, or stop any 4 units per property, everywhere, anywhere in Oakville, and forever. And layered on top of that is the 4-story apartment buildings around Sheridan College. Several councillors have indicated that zoning changes are permanent. There's no dezoning, so once we've gone, we can't come back. Again, looking at this deal, I can't see the residents of Oakville winning. So, don't vote yes just for the money. Next slide, please. In 2018, Oakville was ranked, and I apologize for the repeat of this comment, but I think it's very poignant, that best place to live in Canada. And last year, Mr. Mayor, you even made a comment saying the town's vision is to be the most livable place in the country. I share that vision. I hope everyone in this room shares that vision. Next slide, please. I was surprised, unfortunately, to find the statistics in 2022, and I found that Oakville has built 12 times more homes than Burlington, a fantastic achievement. 11 times more homes are under construction than Burlington. And in the case of apartments, Oakville has constructed 58% of all apartments in Halton. And in the case of Burlington, 0 in 2022. So where are we headed? Next slide, please. It appears that in Burlington's case, they are now ranked the most livable city in Ontario and the 5th in Canada. This is disheartening. It's not about the ranking. It's about the reasons for the ranking. We have become less livable in the last 5 years. So my last slide, please. Oakville is not a name on a map. It is not a place between Toronto and Hamilton on the 403. It is a feeling. It is a sense of community. It's a place where we raise our families, and we hopefully will safely grow old. So please vote no, and whatever deal is being done, please leave the community alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pastoric. I guess nobody likes our rules for an orderly meeting, but what can you do? Madam Clerk, would you please call the next delegation?
Eric Guenier.
Mr. Genier, council looks forward to your information.
Hello, Council. How's everyone doing today? Feeling good? How's everyone in the back doing? Yeah. Okay, so by the look of me, you might guess that I'm voting, I would like yes to pass for the fourplex. I don't know what gave it away, but yeah, so we seem to have reached another point of controversy. Will this motion actually help Oakville, or will this do nothing to combat the housing crisis and in fact decrease the quality of life for longtime residents? Big question. And I'm trying to be cautious about this too. I've been thinking about this probably every day or so. So is this something that will help? If we even get this passed, will there be too much red tape to even make a fourplex? There's height restrictions, parking minimums, building fees for this kind of housing. So if we even get this passed, will this change anything? And that's a question I want to ask myself as well. Like, we have 3 of right here in Oakville, but is there any examples of 3 of right houses being built in Oakville? So I don't know if this plan will change anything unless we have some frugal and accountable processes to get to a point where 4 of right is viable for developers to make and for residents to live in. So one thing I do know is that 4 of right seems like the right step for gentle density. During the Midtown meeting, there was a lot of talk about gentle density. We don't want to put all density into one area of Oakville. We want to spread it out. And 4 of right seems like it's a possible way to do that, right? We can turn one single-family house into a house that can fit 4 families. So that makes sense. And we don't want to get to the point where we just have so much more urban sprawl further north to Oakville, and to the point where we have just more, because the only way to get more dense, to get rid of the traffic, is to have viable options for other public transportation, and that is done through density and more, you can walk, you can bike, but I digress. So there has been cases where 4 of right has worked. You can take, for example, New Zealand. They did implement it countrywide, and there has been cases where some cities have implemented 4 of right, taken away the red tape, such as parking minimums, building fees, and height restrictions, and the price of housing went down. So I understand, though, that we are not New Zealand, we are not Copenhagen, but the problems of Oakville are not unique. This is a problem across entire North America. This is not a problem that there are solutions out there. We just have to find the right ones. And I agree that there should be more options for housing, not just fourplexes that could possibly change the character of our neighborhoods. But to not do fourplexes, I don't think is the right way to go. My biggest question, though, is this is not a housing problem. This is a housing crisis. And points of crisis requires change. So my bigger question is Oakville willing to change? Not everything. I agree with a lot of what the residents say here, that we want a feeling. I grew up in Oakville my life, and I love the feeling of Oakville. But is there a point that, we can change it a bit so that we're not just looking out for our families, but for one another. Thank you.
Mr. Genier, thank you very much for sharing your information with us. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Malcolm French.
Mr. French, welcome. Council's looking forward to hearing from you.
I'm Father Malcolm French. I'm the rector of St. Simon's, Oakville, just up the street here. And we wrote to you, and I want to reiterate the letter. We wrote to you to say that we supported that amendment to the town plan regarding the special student housing area. And I kind of reserved the right to speak here because I wasn't sure if I had anything more to say, but just listening to the conversation to this point, I want to say kia ora to the nice man who brought up New Zealand, because I moved to Oakville after having spent 5 years in Cambridge, New Zealand, where, as he mentioned, they have 4 of right. Cambridge is the most livable town in New Zealand, the most beautiful town in New Zealand, and has not been destroyed by allowing more than one development on a property. I think that's an important thing to say. And I think the other thing I would like to note is that a change to the town plan and a change to zoning regulations are permissive, they're not mandatory. We're not going to go around and tear down every other house to build a 4-story apartment building next to the one that remains. There will be particular proposals that will come, and they will have to go through a planning process and building approvals and all the rest of those things. The fact that I think that rejecting this plan deprives you of flexibility that enacting this plan gives you, and a way of addressing this housing crisis. Building more luxury condos is not, that's the horse and sparrow approach. If you feed the horse enough oats, the sparrows will eventually eat. I don't think that's the right approach to a housing crisis. We need to come up with something that's more creative than that. I believe that proposed amendments to the town plan and the proposed amendments to the zoning give you the flexibility to respond case by case to proposals that are going to address this problem. I would be very disappointed to see you vote it down.
Thank you, Mr. French. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Sonia Sohal.
Ms. Sohal, welcome. Council's looking forward to hearing from you.
Hi. My name is Sania. Sorry, I'm not a very confident speaker. But yeah, I really think 4 as of right is something that would help in the housing shortage and the housing crisis that we're having in Oakville. And with the affordability of living in Oakville, most of all, because I'm a renter. I've seen my rent go up basically over the years as I've been living in Oakville. And Oakville is the place where I did get my citizenship here, and I have pursued my laboratory license here as well. So I really would like to continue living here, but the cost of living here is getting prohibitive, and the housing crisis is a huge reason why. And I think 4 as of right and allowing more gentle density would help in that. Yeah. Next slide, please. Thank you. Basically just repeating what I said. I've been a renter here, and affordability and cost of living has become a huge challenge in the area. And I currently work in the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm continuing to work in the healthcare industry, and that's an essential industry for all towns and cities, of course. So I feel like and the healthcare industry is not something that's a very high-paying industry. So to continue to have people who support in those essential industries, I feel this is something that would be helpful in. It would be helpful to have the cost of living and the rent being reduced in that. Next slide, please. Thank you. Solution to the higher cost of living and the higher rent would be having more density, because that would automatically reduce the renting costs in the area and allow people to live on similar wages without any drastic wage increase, which we know is not going to happen anytime soon. Continue living in Oakville, continue living in this area, because as everyone has mentioned before, Oakville is a good place to live in. The communities that we have here are good and they are strong, but to continue to live here, we need to increase affordability, and more density is the solution to that. And yeah, of course, if we have more construction, that also gives more opportunities for contractors and other small businessmen in the area to also contribute to the area. Next slide, please. Thank you. Also, we are in the midst of climate crisis as well, and I feel like increasing sprawl would not be beneficial in the current climate crisis situation, and density is the way to go if we want to if we want to contribute by not worsening the climate crisis situation. Thank you. Next slide, please. Dense housing is the future. That is what people gravitate towards. Most cities, people do want to live in the downtown. People do want to live in the dense housing area. Those are the areas which do have some of the most thriving communities and some of the most interconnected communities as well. So dense housing is a great place to live in, and also contributes to having the residents of Oakville live in an affordable situation as well. Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. And Oakville is not in a very high population area, but still we have one of the highest rents in the area, which makes living here really unaffordable if you are not a homeowner, and if you do rent, and most people do rent. That is just the reality of the situation. Most people are not homeowners. So if you are a renter, you do need to, that just makes it harder and harder to live in the town of Oakville. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is an issue which affects everyone and not just younger people. In the healthcare industry, we do provide service to a lot of seniors as well. And when you talk to them, you also see them struggling with the same situation that we are struggling with, because a lack of income also comes about with the retirement, as well as when you're starting in the industry. So affordable housing would be the solution to that, and that can be brought about by having more housing density. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Zohal, thank you very much for the time you took and the presentation.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next registered delegation.
Carol McMahon.
Welcome, Ms. McMahon.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, councillors, for this time to speak to you. So I would respectfully ask this council to consider that a significant number of Oakville residents are in support of this motion.
Ms. McMahon, to assist you only, I beg your pardon for interrupting, but you're kind of off mic. If you can pull that thing down and it's adjustable and it won't break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that better? Yeah, okay, I can hear it. So I would respectfully ask this council to consider that there are a significant number of Oakville residents who do support the motion because we wish to age in place. So the initiative that is to amend our own properties to enable us to age where we currently live. So aging in place is an initiative that would comply with the requirements of the Federal Infrastructure and Housing Fund by gently increasing density, very gently. My demographic is an alarmingly large component of our Oakville population. No, we're pretty law-abiding, but we're alarming because data demonstrates that by 2030, the number of seniors will far exceed the number of places in long-term care, assisted living, and retirement homes in Oakville. Where are we going to live? And how much is this going to cost the town? So many of us are aware of this looming housing crisis for our demographic, and we hope to adapt and to create residences that will permit us to age at home. We live south of the QEW in Oakville, where zoning regulations and existing bylaws limit the large lots here to single-family homes. Our neighborhood used to be a working-class neighborhood with affordable housing. But in the past 5 years, every single new home built has been a huge single-family house. These large homes are affordable to only a few and are of no use at all to Oakville's aging citizens. I hope to continue for many years yet, as I do now, to foster my own good health and to reduce my cost impact on our healthcare system by walking to the library, to the grocery store, and to visit my neighbors. Changing the zoning and bylaw limitations that currently exist south of the QEW in Oakville would permit me and many of us seniors three things: to create the kind of living space that our aging demographic requires, to stay in our own neighborhoods, and to be part of the solution to the housing crisis. Not multi-story, not institutions at all, but rather age-equipped homes, smaller homes, possibly 2 residences on one lot, so that adult children and their families could live next door to their aging parents. We would love that. Our lot's 80 feet wide. One of our children could build a house on 40 feet, and we could be on the other 40 feet. That's not crowded, and that's not too dense. Or perhaps other people would choose to build 2 or 3 residences on their lots, and these would be equipped with elevators and designed with space for live-in caregivers. We're thinking about neighborhood appropriate, but still increased accommodation. There's the growing body of evidence demonstrating how accommodations like these reduce healthcare costs and permit the pooling of resources for healthcare providers, while at the same time helping to reduce the housing crisis, is a very strong body of evidence. I hope you'll find it worth considering. Recently, the University Health Network launched a massive funded by the province, provincially funded initiative to foster and support aging in place. So tonight, I'm asking the council to join them in supporting the province's Aging in Place initiative, and more importantly, in complying with the federal infrastructure and housing fund requirements by approving the amendment to the zoning and bylaw limitations, especially south of the QEW in Oakville, to permit us to use our own lots for dwellings like the ones I've described above, and therefore to age in place. Thank you for your consideration.
Ms. McMahon, don't run away, please. Ms. McMahon? I'm sorry, I hope, perhaps I didn't say your name correctly. I just wanted you to know that for a year and a half now, it's been the law of the land in Ontario that every property can have up to 3 dwelling units. And what's before us is to increase that to 4. And so the good news is part of what you've asked for is already yours. And I just wanted to help you with that.
But in fact, it's not, because the zoning and the existing bylaws prevent it.
No, no, ma'am. No, you can do it now.
Oh?
Yes.
Okay, so we could sever our lot and
Well,
give
severing
half
your lot,
to our kids?
Okay.
Severing,
why don't you give me a call tomorrow? We'll have a meeting.
Yes,
I'll
we
explain.
will.
I mean, severing the lot is a different thing than 3 dwelling units on a lot.
okay.
So I'll get you the help you need to be able to pick the path you want.
Thank you. I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please. Oh, sorry. Councilors Chisholm and Hazlet-Thiel, did you have more?
So that was most of what we wanted to, I think, address, and to thank her for coming out, because it is a compelling need. I just thought if Director Charles could just confirm, because one example that was given was to put 2 houses side by side on a single-family dwelling, or putting words in your mouth, could a semi-detached be put on a single-family dwelling property currently today?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, within the confines of the bylaw right now, based on the construct of a single-family house, if you were to, internal to the house, divide that in half, and you still have 2 units within that, so it functions as a semi-detached, but legally is still 1 dwelling unit on 1 lot of record, that is possible right now. As the mayor was saying, if there was a desire to split and have 2 properties there, that is an entirely different process, which would have to go through a consent to sever process.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that for her.
Thank you.
Don't sit down, Gabe. I got a question with this dude, so we're clear. First of all, thanks, Carol, for your presentation. And I can appreciate, especially in our ward with our older population and they have big homes or relative homes, like to move into smaller units. And I can appreciate your points. However, I just want to be very clear. Granny flats. Don't take this the wrong way, but granny flats on top of garages are considered an accessory dwelling. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the change in the bylaw recognizes those as an additional dwelling unit. So it would function as another dwelling unit within the property, which is still within the purview of the change in legislation, which allows up to 3 units per property.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council, for illuminating that there are many options ahead for Carol and others.
I'm going to call you tomorrow. And can I just take a minute? I would like to thank Kathy Dudak and Ray Chisholm. They do awesome work in our riding. They work so hard. And I'm not saying you have to support my initiative. I just want you to know how appreciated you really are. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hold hands.
I thank you on their behalf for the bouquet. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation, please?
Lawrence Faulkner.
Mr. Faulkner? Mr. Faulkner? Falconer, perhaps, if I don't say it clearly enough. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
Ron Bell.
Mr. Bell, Council looks forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments proposed on the revised action plan for the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund application, HAF. My name's Ron Bell. I've been a resident of Oakville for more than 30 years. I'm speaking on behalf of all those who are strongly opposed to these amendments. Sorry about the microphone's spitting at me. First, I want to say that I am in agreement that there's need to increase housing availability and affordability. So everyone's, I think, on the same page. But I'm strongly against the way it's being proposed. We need to stop Oakville's decline from being one of the most livable cities in Canada. So I'm here to provide alternatives to achieve or exceed the same goals that can be a solution for all, and ask you to vote against the 2 proposed items under review. Slide, please. These items are referred to as 4 as of right, 4 dwelling units per detached residential property. As of right, by the way, means without the need for council approval. Correct, I believe that's correct. And number 2, 4-story apartment buildings within the Sheridan College housing area, special policy area within 800 meters of Sheridan College. The original action plan submitted to apply for funding from HAF had 7 action items as required. The 2 specific items just mentioned were not on that initial list. In response to the application, Federal Housing Minister Sean Fraser asked the town to enhance the action plan to be more competitive with other municipalities and suggested allowing 4 as of right townwide and 4-story apartment buildings in the Sheridan College area as examples to increase housing density. After receiving this request, the town could have withdrawn the application by deciding that the suggested changes don't fit into Oakville's growth management plans. This is what Windsor did, as noted in the CBC news article from January of 24. Next slide, please. It says that these amendments could have an impact on established neighborhoods by changing the landscape that residents did not anticipate and making demands on services. Councillors expressed concerns ranging from flooding to intensification and quality of life. The Mayor of Windsor said that allowing 4 units and 4 stories in all residential lots without public consultation or council control does not work for our city. I refuse to compromise our neighborhoods in exchange for uncertain funding that will be tied to sacrificing the makeup of our communities. However, Oakville decided to revise the application rather than withdraw, and 4 additional items were added to enhance the action plan. 2 of those items are ones suggested by the federal government and which we are voting against. I'm here to provide some alternatives that may strengthen the HAF application for submission, but only after those 2 proposed action items are voted down tonight. Before I do, let's review some of the guiding principles of the town's strategic direction related to housing. Next slide, please. From the Housing Strategy and Action Plan of July 23, it states that we will work to achieve the goal of creating more housing while ensuring growth is contextually appropriate and fiscally responsible. Slide, please. And from the Livable Oakville Plan, aimed at maintaining the character of residential areas, Section 2 says, we will preserve, enhance, and protect the distinct character, cultural heritage, living environment, and sense of community of neighborhoods. Section 3 says, some growth and change may occur in the residential areas, provided the character of the area is preserved. And Section 4, our managing growth, says, the key focus for intensification will be the locations identified as growth areas. Lands outside of these growth areas are predominantly stable residential communities which consist of established neighborhoods. Some growth and change may occur in these areas, provided the character of the area is preserved. The proposed amendments are not in line with those town guidelines that direct us to avoid disruption of established neighborhoods and alienating long-time residents when planning for growth, especially when there are alternatives available to accomplish the same thing that do respect these guidelines. Next slide. In addition, it's unreasonable for the town to support Sheridan College as a priority over Oakville citizens by proposing a special policy area to help them with student housing. The 800-meter radius identified as subject lands includes several established Oakville residential neighborhoods, none of which were built for the purpose of housing Sheridan College students. As such, the motion to create a special policy area called Sheridan College Housing Area is inappropriate, disrespectful, and for me personally, it's offensive. The only location that really constitutes a housing area for Sheridan College is the land on the Sheridan College property. So I'm asking you to reject the designation of a Sheridan College housing area and to vote against the 4 as of right and 4-story apartment building items of the current action plan. Slide, please. I'd like to provide several alternatives that could allow and encourage the building of thousands of housing units across the town, including some as affordable housing options for seniors, families, and young people. These alternatives respect the Livable Oakville Plan, complement existing property and structures, do not require unnecessary demolition of existing houses or the disruption of existing thriving neighborhoods. Also, they help to minimize urban sprawl into our valuable green space by building within existing town boundaries. So let's take a look at some of these alternatives. Slide, please. Alternative 1, build residential units above parking lot spaces. For this alternative, residential units are built on top of a supportive column infrastructure, allowing the use of parking spaces to be retained while providing housing. We don't have to choose between vehicles or people. They can both share the same footprint. This is not a new concept. It's being done in other countries and cities around the world. In this slide, you see an example from Germany, not Copenhagen, described as affordable dwellings. And another example closer to home, Kitchener votes yes to build housing over parking lots. While this solution can be applied town-wide, it's particularly suitable for Sheridan College to be able to provide more housing for thousands of students. Slide, please. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so from this aerial view of Sheridan College, you can see that 30 to 40% of the property is used for parking lots. From basic analysis, we estimate the parking lot coverage is about 40,000 square meters, enough for 3,200 student units, 4 times what's existing today. And if some of these were made available as quads, like they have at Davis campus at Brampton, they would also be more affordable. There are no quads at Trafalgar campus today. Next slide, please. Alternative 2, build residential units on top of commercial. This option is already part of the Sheridan housing proposal, but it's limited to C1 zoning, neighborhood commercial. C2, it could be expanded to C2, community commercial, and C3, core commercial, and be applied town-wide. From our analysis of C1 commercial in the Sheridan area alone, we estimate over 400 units could be established over C1 properties, including both 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. If this were to be extended town-wide, we could realize thousands of residential units, many of which could be planned and built as affordable. Slide, please. Alternative 3, acquire and repurpose underutilized hotels. During COVID, there was a drastic underutilization of hotels. Hotel conversions would repurpose existing functional hotels into housing units for young families, student housing, or senior living. Compared to acquiring apartment buildings or building from scratch, investors who acquire and convert hotels often get better returns for lower risk. I'm going to run out of time now. Here you see an example from the Link to Build Ontario website. Developers plan to convert an historic hotel in downtown Toronto. Another example from CTV News, the University of Guelph has already turned a Holiday Inn into residences for its students, and they're planning second phase for redeveloping more student housing. To encourage this approach in the US, there are government programs, including the Hotels to Housing Conversion Act, which was created for this purpose. Slide, please. Alternative 4, acquire and repurpose underutilized office space. This is similar to the hotel solution, but for underutilized office buildings, while many more continue to work at home. With the infrastructure and services already in place, this underutilized real estate can fairly easily be converted into residential units. Next slide, please. Alternative 5, expand use of co-op type housing. With the co-op housing model, the building is cooperatively owned by its residents, essentially making them both the landlord and the tenant. It can allow people of all incomes to live more affordably. Since they operate on a break-even basis, co-ops are often much cheaper than market rentals and tend to be more stable because most cannot be sold. This alternative could be applied to existing townhouse complexes or be a ratio requirement for new developments. From Story's website in March 24, Vancouver Council approved a motion to partner with nonprofit organizations by building more co-op housing on city-owned land, an approach that has been many benefits but has seen little investment in recent decades. Councillors said there is a growing demand for co-op housing in Vancouver. This commitment could be a game changer for expanding affordable housing. Slide, please. In closing, I'm proud to be a longtime resident of Oakville and equally proud of the town representatives who have worked hard to protect it with a sensible, controlled growth. By voting against the currently proposed amendments, you will not only benefit from the reasons mentioned, but will show that your integrity is intact by following the guiding documents and principles of a livable Oakville, which will be part of your legacy. You have the ability to forge a path for the future of Oakville. It's win-win by choosing alternatives, and I won't read them off because they're already there. There have never been more clear and compelling reasons to vote against the currently proposed amendments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bell, for staying close to the time allotment. And unless I'm mistaken, you're probably going to get what you're asking for.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you call the next registered delegation?
Alexander Mantatis.
Ms. Mantatis, or Mr. Mantatis? I beg your pardon. Welcome. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, and staff. I'm making this prepared statement on behalf of Anne Ferrero, who, due to a travel scheduling conflict, was not able to be present in person this evening. Firstly, I would like to enter into the record my submission of a further 2 petitions signed by residents of College Park, together with residents of other wards across the town of Oakville, and some into the GTA voicing their opposition to the proposals currently before us. These petitions have also been forwarded by email to the Mayor, Councillors Grant and Knoll, as well as the Clerk's office. At this stage, we have been informed by spokespersons for Sheridan College that the campus has no need for an increase in availability for student housing, but will, in effect, experience a radical decrease in its enrollment in the coming years. So much so that it has been widely reported that campuses across the country are preparing for lean fiscal times ahead, resulting in the cutting of programs and the letting go of professors. It has been confirmed that Sheridan College is among this impacted group. A radical decrease in student enrollment equates in a radical decrease in the need for student housing. The town does not need to hear about what lands are currently available or how to best modify existing properties to create more housing. The town's planning department is well versed in all of this and much more, and knows better than the citizens what currently sits on its books. Nor does the town need to be reminded that it has already exceeded its target for new homes. Again, it knows this better than us. However, this town and its executive does need to be reminded that as members of this executive, you were all elected into office by us to serve us as our representative voice. Every member of this executive has run for office on more or less the same platform with respect to championing for the issues we all care about, as well as ensuring that our issues, needs, and concerns are heard, understood, and addressed. In the 35 years that I have been a resident of this town, I do not recall a more contentious, personal, and emotionally charged issue coming before this executive. Now is the time to stand behind the words that got you elected to office. And now is the time to make the right decision on behalf of the constituents that you have heard from over the last few months and that are gathered here this evening. Thank you for your time and your judicious attention to this matter.
Thank you very much for the message. Mr. Mantidis, sir, I hope that Anne will hear what a good job you did reading her message. That was no rote read. Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please.
Point of order, Your Worship. I have a question of staff.
Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. Question to staff. With respect to Sheridan College being a community college in the definition, is there any writings with respect to capping, student capping at Sheridan College, or is it just open-ended and expanding until whenever? I do note that there seems to be a decline, but I'd like to know if there is a capping based on the Planning Act with respect to the college and its definition.
For you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of any, but that's something that we'll have to take back and report back to Council.
Councillor, if I could add some information to that for you. The colleges and universities are preparing for a reduction in the number of foreign students because part of the generation of the housing crisis was the huge increase in foreign students. And the federal government has belatedly decided to dial that back as they try to ramp up housing. So there's a tension between the two, and there will be, the students will be back, I imagine, but not until the federal government succeeds in finding a way to fix its way out of the problem that it created. So I think that's what the resident message that he read was getting at. Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please.
Connor Zapp.
Mr. Zapp, welcome. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
All right. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, that's very good.
Perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Connor Zapp. I'm a lifelong resident of Oakville, and more specifically of the College Park community. And just a little more about me. I'm a soon-to-be graduate of the University of Toronto, and I have the great fortune of being able to continue my studies there at the graduate level, pursuing my master's this fall. The reason I'm here before you today, Council, is to urge you to support For As of Right and the Sheridan College the Sheridan College Housing Area Special Policy Zone. What's pushed me to come here to ask you to support this motion is frankly the what I've seen members of my community do to try to oppose this motion, which I've found greatly heartbreaking and disheartening. Part of my education has been in urban geography, and this kind of opposal to these common sense and credible policies to improve affordability for residents of Oakville, especially as a younger person who will be part of the generation that's more affected by this, is deeply troubling to me. So, what I've come here to do is to make a case as to why you, council, should approve this motion. I am first going to provide a bit of an overview of the context of the housing crisis. I will then move on to discuss how these amendments would improve affordability in the town of Oakville. And finally, I would like to discuss some other non-affordability specific benefits that would come with these, approving these amendments. So first and foremost, let's look at the context, the housing crisis that we find ourselves in. So I'm going to start here by citing a bit from the Housing Affordability Task Force report, and I quote, "People in households that spend 30% or more of total household income on shelter expenses are defined as having a housing affordability problem. Shelter expenses include electricity, oil, gas, coal, wood, and other fuels, water and other municipal services, monthly mortgage payments, property taxes, condominium fees, and rent." That's on page 8, if you're looking for that citation. Bearing this in mind, the 30% spent on housing costs, I would like to now direct your attention to some other statistics. This being from a RBC Thought Leadership report titled "The Great Rebuild, 7 Ways to Fix Canada's Housing Shortage." And this measures the percentage of the median Canadian household income spent on housing. And it found that the lowest since 2002 of the percent spent on housing was 34%, meaning that for decades now, we have been in a state of housing unaffordability, and that has only gotten worse in recent years, hitting 40 and even 50% of the median household income. Furthermore, provincially, we have committed to build 1.5 million new homes in the province, as I'm sure many, if not all of you are aware, to help combat this housing crisis. However, what's concerning is we are not on track to meet this. In order to reach this 1.5 million target, we have to be building at least a minimum of 125,000 homes a year, and Radio Canada found that for the year of 2024, it's expected that the province of Ontario will only be building approximately 88,000 new homes. So turning down an opportunity to up this housing, to up the housing stock, to bring Ontario closer to meeting its targets is frankly something I find a bit irresponsible if council were to vote down this motion. I would now like to move into discussing how these proposed amendments would improve affordability. I've been a bit concerned hearing from other delegates, not only in this meeting, but other meetings, that these measures would not improve affordability. However, I would like to draw your attention again to the Housing Affordability Task Force, with their third recommendation being precisely these measures, allowing for 4 as of right, additionally, up to 4 stories on a single residential property. Additionally, these measures target the rental market. They're designed to allow for a greater degree of rental stock, which is where some of the most urgent need for action is in terms of dealing with the housing crisis. Again, going back to the RBC Thought Leadership Report, there is only one market in Canada where the rental market, the rental vacancy rate is at what's considered to be stable. Everything else is below, meaning there is a severe need to build additional rental units. Part of the problem is exclusionary zoning for exclusively single-family detached homes doesn't allow for the missing middle, which could go a long way in providing a lot of this need for additional rental units. So passing these amendments would in fact improve affordability. Now finally, I'd like to move on to some of the other benefits of the proposed amendments that aren't strictly affordability related. So number one of the things that isn't mentioned as much, I find, is that on Sheridan College, there is a major transportation hub. So building these, allowing for the Sheridan College housing area would provide not only more affordable rental housing, but easy access to not only Oakville public transit, but to GO buses. So this would provide a plethora of active and non-auto-centric transportation options, providing not only more rental housing, but more environmentally sustainable and climate-friendly transit options, and making Oakville less, strictly speaking, auto-dependent. Furthermore, I've heard a lot of mention of Sheridan College building more residences for students, and I absolutely agree. It's something we need to do. It would go a long way to help with that. However, I think that only building student residences is somewhat short-sighted. When it comes to graduates from the school, right? They're gonna need somewhere to stay. Obviously, it won't be just around Sheridan College. However, having those options would allow for them to stay there and to build a community and help be part of the community. Additionally, these would be people trained in a lot of the professions of the future economy. And I just want to list a few programs that the Trafalgar campus offers for those who may be unaware, which are institutionally or economically significant. Early childhood education, educational support, social work, media, various media options, coding, game design, animation and film, all of which are incredibly important professions which would provide a great degree of support and also trained in Oakville professionals that we could then keep in Oakville. That would be all that I have to say, councillors. I urge you to consider passing these motions for the future for everyone to ensure a more affordable and livable Oakville. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, the next delegation. Oh, sorry.
So sorry.
Councillor Nanda.
Sorry about that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your presentation, and I do appreciate that there's a clear divide here that we see between the young and the younger. So we're the young and you're the younger.
Of course, of course.
But in any case, what do you consider affordable?
So I think the thing is, right, I understand, and I'm under no delusion, that these housing units wouldn't be immediately affordable. However, the way that I view it is it's a step in the right direction towards getting us to affordable. Affordability isn't going to be accomplished by one particular measure. It's going to be multiple measures implemented, right? And we're not really in a position, as I outlined with my overview, to be turning down potential measures to increase the housing stock when we're already 2 decades plus behind in terms of working towards getting affordable housing for the majority of Canadians. So that's kind of my view with it. I think it's important that we pass it for that reason.
So I think if I can give just a little bit of context for just a minute. We're in Ward 7, Councillor Che and I, north of Dundas.
Yeah.
And I think if anyone has driven, even through Dundas, you've seen the level of density.
For sure.
I've been there for 10 years. What I bought my house at, luckily at that point, is worth 3 times what it is now. And even with the density, the chances of it going down to a level of affordability, even though we're getting that level of density in terms of homes, we don't see it in the near future. And what we've seen in turn is quality of life has gone down a little bit only because of level of services. So I understand when a lot of people come out and say that, you know, this is gonna allow for affordability. The issue is that there's no guarantee for that. So if we don't get that for your generation in the next 10 years, where do we go from there then?
Sorry, I didn't catch that last part.
Where do we go from there then, right? If we can't get that for you in the next, because what I've seen the last decade with what was passed 20 years ago in our community, it hasn't worked the way that we had hoped it would.
Of course, I understand the concern, but I think what it comes down to is the fact that it's only happening in some areas and not all areas. We need to be allowing for greater intensification of density in all areas, and that's kind of where we'll get towards a greater bit of affordability. And it's also, as I highlighted again in the overview, we're facing 2+ decades of inadequate work towards making that, to making housing more affordable, so it's not gonna happen overnight. but it's making sure that we're taking the steps now and that we continue taking them into the future to make sure that we reach that point of affordability. And so turning this down would be turning down one of those steps that we need to be taking in order to make up for all the lost time.
Thank you, Councillor Hernandez. Thank you, Mr. Zapp. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Talia Gonzalez.
Ms. Gonzalez. Council's looking forward to hearing from you. Welcome.
Sorry if I kind of tend to stumble over my words. It's my first time delegating. But yeah, good evening, members of council. I am firstly coming up here to say that I am in favor of Fours of Right. I believe that in the long run, with proper awareness and education given to the general public on the topic, this ruling will create a great positive impact for citizens of Oakville. Not only for members of the younger generation, but also for everyone. Multiplexes are there to provide much needed housing for any and all ages in Oakville. This problem affects everyone, from the young to the older generations. All sides need housing, and if we properly raise awareness to Fours of Right, I believe it'll benefit Oakville in the short and long term, which should always be the goal that citizens and councillors strive for. This isn't an issue that I'm thinking will immediately change things right now. I am more so thinking that it can change things in the near and far future. Despite this, I was disappointed watching the March 4th Fours of Right meeting in full time and hearing what certain delegates and council members had said. If we need a specific quote, I quote a member of council. I think that there are people who think that what we do here will change things, and unfortunately, that's not true. It would seem to me that what is implied here is that the point of council and also delegation is an utterly redundant system. As they pointed out once again, I think that there are people who think that what we do here will change things, and unfortunately, that's not true. Now, they might not have meant it that way, but it can surely be interpreted in such a way to have that as a reading. Now, I understand if personal opinions get in the way of making decisions, but I thought the point of council was leaving that behind in order to come together to make long-lasting and positive changes in Oakville, regardless of personal beliefs on the matter. I believe that we should really listen to the professionals on the matter, as they're the ones who know what actually works. All housing professionals recommend policies like Fours of Right anywhere, town-wide. Nevertheless, let us continue. I greatly appreciate the enthusiasm and advice from council that was given when colleagues and I began to more actively frequent meetings. It felt like a breath of fresh air to have individuals who ran the government of our town listen and encourage us during these meetings on topics that we really wanted to make an overall change in Oakville for. One of these topics being trying to strive for more middle density options in Oakville, which Fours of Right would assist in accomplishing. Though this then brings me to my second point, which is the double standards and very clearly displayed bias towards certain demographics by council regarding housing concerns. Oakville does not feel like an inclusive town during town meetings due to council favoring those of the older generations who are already established. It feels like most housing for anyone outside of that age range isn't considered, and if it is, it clearly can't be properly regulated by our lawmakers. Regulating housing and having different and possibly more attainable options isn't possible if it will clearly affect your own housing and neighborhood characteristics personally, right? Do those of you with your own children who have often mentioned also cannot afford housing not see the underlying problem/solution here? I believe that this attitude can really harm the relationship that Oakville has to its younger generation and their housing as a whole. I believe that the well-being and health of our younger generation and students is a lot more valuable than neighborhood characteristics, despite fourplexes and four-stories having such little visual impact. When it comes to students, they are coming out of Sheridan and may choose to try and stay in Oakville to help grow and better the community. But without that backbone, that would be more housing options and political will, then they are more than likely to take their talents elsewhere. If it affects one person from the demographic mentioned previously, even slightly, it cannot be passed, even though bylaws like Fours of Right would greatly benefit many more people in the near and far future. If you're someone who cannot afford to live in a single-family home or can't afford to own a car and have to rely on other methods of transportation, clearly Oakville does not welcome you, even if you were born and raised here. Your wants and needs are too inconvenient for everyone else who Oakville clearly does care for. And from what I've been hearing today around me, that sentiment is true. Multiple generations are swept away in a housing crisis because already established residents who all live and own large houses are scared of harmless shadows from non-existent buildings that at the end of the day will probably not even be built in their multi-million-dollar neighborhoods, and so will then be pushed to the north because they say it's not their problem. This, in fact, is their problem because they live in Oakville. If we continue to push projects to the north in favor of soothing their character, shadow, and height fears, the problems will continue to grow and our growth will continue to be unhealthy, especially considering that fourplexes and low-rises have incredibly minimal visual impact. I'm not saying this is a north versus south issue. During my time watching these meetings, I have seen countless instances of projects being rejected in the South due to the fears mentioned before. And oftentimes, delegates have stated that these housing issues are not their problem and should be pushed elsewhere. If we continue to just apply Band-Aids to a gaping wound, it'll continue to grow until it is too late. These issues are Oakville-wide and should be addressed that way and not pushed somewhere else. These developments should be implemented throughout Oakville, in places where it is most needed, like near transit hubs such as Oakville Go and Sheridan College. Locations like these in already established communities will bring the most benefit out of bylaws like this by allowing new residents to live closer to the places they want to go. As an example, while members of council would often thank us for delegating as members of the younger generation, sometimes they would also tell us we didn't know what we were talking about, or didn't consider the risks, or how these middle density developments would turn Oakville into a ghetto. But as soon as members of the demographic mentioned previously also said they too wanted gentle density, it was suddenly, thank goodness, thank you so much for saying that. That's exactly what I was thinking. Or once again, in reference to the March 4 as a Right meeting, many times when someone would say they would be for as a Right, many members of council would thank them, or in the case of the quote used earlier, disregard what they were saying. But once someone was very against it, I would notice members of council jumping at the chance to tell the delegate that they absolutely agreed with them. Or even during the April 22nd meeting, one of the delegates was in favor of Midtown and gave a good presentation. Afterwards, members of council peppered him with questions on his delegation and then say next to nothing when someone with NIMBY ideals presents their points on the matter. Council, listen to Oakville residents, which bylaws like 4 as a Right have the most absolute impact on. Those who are out there trying their best to make ends meet by working, studying, and being barely able to afford a home. Many people of the younger generation cannot go to these meetings because they are working on getting an education that will hopefully get them good jobs, or they are out working those jobs for long shifts to make money, to live somewhere. I, in fact, have many friends that have 2 or 3 jobs, and they still cannot afford to find a place to live in Oakville where they have lived their whole lives. But I forget, the younger generation doesn't want to work and just needs to learn how to save, right? Since we cannot hold property in this so small town with a population of more than 200,000, people say that we should move elsewhere to be less inconvenient to those who do currently hold property. Because we don't hold property, our opinions simply do not seem to matter to some of you. And I find that incredibly disheartening. Do you truly and sincerely care for these projects that will fundamentally outlive you for the sake of those who at the end of the day will actually live there? Or do you only care about how these projects will affect you personally? Think of the countless Oakville residents whose lives will be greatly improved by being able to move to a multiplex or low-rise, having to worry less about the cost of living and more about actually living. Unfortunately, that is the majority of Oakville residents, especially around our age. 4 as a Right is a project that will, at the end of the day, not inconvenience anyone. It is a wonderful bylaw that could possibly bring/uplift the community and generations together under one roof. New families being in the same small multiplex as people who are retired and helping each other out. University students and retirees helping each other out with groceries, chores, or even assignments for class. This project will provide housing for those who need it, housing that Oakville is in desperate need of, and bring people closer together rather than pushing them apart. That sounds more convenient than anything. I truly hope that you really take what I have said into consideration. Please reevaluate what your priorities are and strive for a better and more considerate Oakville. Because if not, more and more of the younger generation you claim to care for, that you claim to need, are going to be leaving. If your duty is to the younger and future generations of Oakville, then you will pass the 4 as a Right and Sheridan Housing Area Bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your impassioned information. Councillor Dudek has something for you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, first-time delegation, you did a very good job.
Thank you.
And I respect your opinion, and I applaud you for coming forward with something so heartfelt. I don't agree with a lot of the points that you made, but I respectfully disagree, but appreciate the fact you came out and that you gave it such consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Jeffrey Belcher.
Mr. Belcher, welcome. Welcome back, I should say. We look forward to your information.
Hello. Is this a good volume? Before I start, I just want to say, it takes a lot of guts to come up here and say stuff to the community you live in. And, if you're just going to come up and boo somebody, a 23-year-old really shouldn't have to say to someone who's looking over 50 not to boo someone when it comes up here. Because all of us are trying to come here and bring the community together. But, I don't know, up here some people are really offended by any change in their life. So I'm a bit disappointed by that, but I'll continue anyways. My name is Jeffrey Belcher. I'm resident of Ward 2. I'm 23 years old. And I support gentle density in Oakville. And this is a presentation that I want to give because I've been following this whole process this entire time, and I want to kind of give the younger generation's perspective on it. Next slide, please. So housing is totally out of reach for me in Oakville. And it doesn't have to be this way, but it is. When I was younger, I was told, go to university, get a degree, save your money, and then you'll be able to buy a house. And I did all that. I have zero debt. I make a decent salary. I live with my parents. I have very low expenses right now because of them, so thank you to my parents. But still, I'm left with nothing. There's no options for me in Oakville, and it sucks because I grew up here. But it appears that people are more concerned about aesthetics than actually building the housing to support the next generation. Next slide, please. 26% of people in Oakville, that equates to 70,000 people, spend more than 30% of their income on housing costs. And again, it doesn't have to be this way. This was from the Globe and Mail. And I mean, it just seems crazy to me that with this type of statistic, over a quarter of our population, that there are people here who are ready to shoot down this bylaw. What about the situation makes you think that we can say no to these? We're out of control. Next slide, please. We have the 4th most expensive average 1- and 2-bedroom rent in Canada. We have a more expensive rent than Burlington, Mississauga, Ottawa, Surrey, Halifax, Brampton, North York, Victoria. And we're only $172 cheaper per month than Toronto. Soon we're going to be 3rd. The only people in front of us are North Vancouver, Vancouver, and Toronto, and then Oakville. We have a fraction of the population. It's totally unacceptable. And yet some people here seem like they don't even want to acknowledge the problem. Next slide, please. People have been talking about affordability without talking about increasing the supply. Supply is the key to this. Affordability isn't a material that you harvest and then build a house out of. It's supply. It's basic economics. Every single commodity on the planet follows this rule. If we had an expensive apple problem, you wouldn't say, oh, well, we don't have enough affordable apples, but we actually have enough apples. That doesn't make any sense. No economist agrees with you. Why is it suddenly different for housing? Supply is the key. You build enough housing, the price goes down. It's not unique. It's just basic economics. Next slide, please. Fourplexes are great, but some people are just being so dramatic. This bylaw doesn't mean that you have to convert your house. It doesn't mean that you have to change your house to 4 stories. It just says that you're allowed to build something else. Some people think that if we allow anything else to be built, it's going to destroy a neighborhood. That's just totally dramatic. And I'm tired of calling it I'm tired of people not calling it what it is. It's NIMBYism. Next slide, please. Look at these scary fourplexes. Aren't you terrified? This is Toronto. I'm quivering in my boots right now because I lived in one of these in Halifax for 5 years, and I'm still alive, believe it or not. This is the type of argument, though, against these. Big, scary buildings, ruins neighborhood character, super scary, bad, 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 bad. And I'm getting kind of tired of it because these aren't arguments. These are just complaints. And these types of houses, by the way, are older than the suburbs. The suburbs only popped up in the 50s and 60s. This is what we used to build before that. So stop with the arguments around neighborhood character and heritage. This is what actually we started building. Next slide, please. Yet in these same neighborhoods, especially this is from Ward 3, because I used to live there, look at what we're preserving. This is fine? People don't go, oh, big, tall, scary building when it comes to this. I think they just don't want more people in their neighborhood. Heritage, yeah, heritage, right? Neighborhood character, right? Getting kind of old, guys. Next slide, please. What frustrates me about this whole process, too, is like there's real problems with urbanism that we should be talking about, but we're not talking about them. We're talking about made-up ones, like neighborhood character and heritage, to avoid addressing the real issues. Because the reality is that the people who oppose this bill have no alternatives and no solutions to present tonight, and that's just unacceptable. Oh, sorry. I didn't realize we could build housing over a parking lot. I guess I'm close to living in my car anyway, so at least the commute will be short. Next slide, please. Here's the difference between concerned residents and a NIMBY in Oakville. The concerned resident will clearly state their concerns with evidence and specifics. They offer alternatives and strategies for mitigation, but overall they support development. The NIMBY will vaguely gesture to character and heritage without giving any examples. They offer no alternatives and solutions, and it ends with no development. What do we think this room sounds like tonight? Next slide, please. Reality is that you guys really oppose everything. You oppose duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, low-rise, high-rise, mid-rise. Are you for anything? Next slide, please. Are you for anything at all? I just hope that we have some solution to present tonight that isn't just a task force. Because you know what the other task force said? Pass this bylaw. And you know what the other task force is going to tell you to do? The same thing. So I'll save you thousands of dollars. Just pass this bill, take the money, and do something you think will work. Next slide, please. Tonight, we demand action. No more empty promises. Save your words for your re-election. Just do your job. Thank you. Next slide, please. I think that's it, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher. Madam Clerk, next delegation.
Vera Farrick-Bies.
Can I see the name? Welcome, Ms. Farrick-Bies. We look forward to your information.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, everyone. I'm terribly sorry. I didn't come prepared as my esteemed colleagues and everybody in audience who came and present everything. I was just concerned with this new bylaw making an area around Sheridan College denser, which I don't approve because people think if you build quadruplex or triplex or anything in the area that is closer to Sheridan College, it will be more affordable. I don't agree with that. It's not going to be affordable just because it become quad or just because one single residential area is split in 4. That's, in my opinion, it's not going to work. What the gentleman proposed before, where the empty parking lots are, and build on that area, an area that Sheridan College has plenty of empty space closer to Ravine, I think it will be more appropriate to build there and build appropriate housing. Everybody is concerned that everybody should be more transparent and live with diversity and everything. But diversity sometimes, I'm sorry, but diversity sometimes does not work. Anyway, my point is I do not approve this proposal, and thank you very much for inviting me and being here. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you for adding your voice. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Stan Sonia.
Mr. Sonia? Mr. Sonia? Stan Sonia. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
Pryancia Murphy.
Mr. Murphy, welcome. Council looks forward to hearing from you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here today. First and foremost, I hear the arguments of NIMBYism, and I do not want to be seen as a NIMBY. I do not want to be a NIMBY. I have been in Oakville as a student. I have been in Oakville as a homeowner. I have been in Oakville as a landlord of students. I have various different aspects of this argument, and I definitely agree that the density spread, whatever it's called, a gentle density, good, very, very good. However, I think that my personal beliefs are that it is a problem that is for when there is no other land solutions. I've heard a lot of things, and I heard the argument of the parking lot and living in the car. I think that was a little low, but I think that there are so many land options that if we were carpeted with single-family dwellings and there was no other land available, I would be completely and totally in favor of allowing something like this. I believe that right now with the this building that we're currently standing in has been deemed to be not important. They are going to demolish this building, and they could put this building somewhere else in Oakville, and this could all be land that could be developed because they're going to literally demolish this building in a couple of years. There is many, all the parking lots that were discussed, things like that. So I just think that allowing the fourplexes in individual single-family housing dwellings, that is a thing that could be dealt with in the future if it was required. At this point, I don't believe it is required with all of the available land that is there. My major concern is the family aspect of this. I live in a neighborhood, I picked the neighborhood that I live in that is very near to this building because of it being a residential neighborhood with families. I know developers. If this is not sold to, sorry, if these lands, if somebody, my next door neighbor decides to sell their property and a developer is allowed to do this, a developer is going to buy it, they're going to build it, and it's not going to be affordable housing, it's going to be expensive rental housing. And I am a fan of the idea of these blank lands that I have described being sold to co-ops, not-for-profits, things that make it into something that is not going to be unaffordable housing. Big, big fan. But if it's just let people knock down a house and build a fourplex, it will not be affordable. That's my personal belief, unless there's something that prevents it from going to massive property. Also, I can't speak for the west side of Trafalgar Road, but the east side of Trafalgar Road around Sheridan College, White Oaks Boulevard specifically, is one of the most economically diverse neighborhoods I've seen in Oakville or most towns. On that street and the streets surrounding White Oaks Boulevard is every type of housing. You have apartments, you have condos, you have high-rise condos, you have low-rise condos, you have row apartments, you have row houses, you have row condo, like every type of housing is in that neighborhood. It's one of the most economically diverse neighborhoods that is in Oakville, and I think it's extremely impressive, and we should strive for that all over Oakville. So again, that particular neighborhood, the one that I live in, that I love because it is so economically diverse, I don't think it needs to change. Other neighborhoods around Oakville, maybe they do. I don't live in them, I can't speak to their statistics, but White Oaks Boulevard and the streets off of White Oaks Boulevard are amazingly economically diverse. St. Simon's Church, thank you very much for coming and giving your opinion. I would like to know if your massive plot of land would be made available for this initiative. You have a lot of unused land. And also, I'll leave that to the councilors if he's allowed to answer that question, because if the answer is yes, I would love to hear it. And the last thing I would like to say is there was somebody in a previous presentation said that most people live in the big city. They like to live in high-density buildings. I don't know if that's true. If that statement is true, that living in a high-density building, living in a high-rise is something that people like to do, I'd like to see that study. I think that people live in high-rise buildings and high-dense areas out of necessity, not out of desire. And again, if I'm wrong on that, I'm willing to be told that I'm wrong on that. But I think that blanketly saying a statement like that, but people like that thing without backing it up, I don't know if that's true. Those are my thoughts. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, could you just wait, sir?
Stephen Johnson.
Mr. French, if you'd be so kind as to let Mr. Johnson take his turn, we can then welcome you back.
Hey there, 31-year-old Oakville, 30-year-old Oakville resident, longtime fan, first-time caller. Let me get started. Mayor Burton, good evening. Good evening, members of council and town staff. And I've been hearing a lot from the young people in this conference, and I'd like to say, a few things here. I mean, I've been called a Marxist to my own face before, so let's get on this level. As Mr. O'Meara previously pointed out, things have changed in Oakville in terms of affordability. My mother, for instance, bought a century home in 1989 on Sumner Avenue. She was 24 years old. That cost her 3 times her annual salary as a second-year teacher. Today, which my mother sold this house long ago, but it would cost 25 times my annual salary, and I've been teaching 8 years. I have the top salary bracket for my level of teaching, by the way, just to let you know. I can't buy a small condo for less than 8 to 10 times my annual income, and as a single man, I can't qualify for a mortgage. But I could pay just as much in rent month after month. I could buy an entire house with my lifetime's rent if I were renting. My brother, he's a lawyer. He had to move 75 minutes away to afford a small home in a place that reminds him of the previously green Oakville he grew up in and not an increasingly dense and less green Oakville. If he has a family, he has to rely on the government for daycare. Can't turn to his family, can't turn to the people he grew up with. Look, I'm all for solutions, but 4 as of right is not the solution. I've seen examples of it in Mississauga, the people living in those places going stir crazy, the young people going stir crazy. And I have 3 questions about all of this. Are these units rentals, freeholds, condos? Is there any fixed idea of what these buildings will be? Because if not, that's a problem. $35 million doesn't go far. That's literally 35 houses in Oakville. That's less than 2 streets worth of homes. People, this isn't Field of Dreams. We're not gonna get the Ghost of Shoeless Joe because we bought 35 houses. So if they're rental only, I don't want them. What happened to our dream of ownership? Are we so content as young people now to rent for our entire lives? Your average rental home does not have space for a family, if we ever get a family, I don't need a new home with granite countertops and 4 bathrooms. I want to raise a family with my girlfriend. I want to marry her, and I want to have kids. It's unclear from the draft plans, the bylaw agreements, any of that this will enable the property owner to sever freestanding units. I understand that that's currently prohibited by the Planning Act. I'm not so clear on the points. I'm a little new to this, but I think severing is currently against regulation. You can correct me if I'm wrong. At the virtual meeting held this year, I listened to my contemporaries begging for an affordable basement apartment. Anyone who's watched Scott Pilgrim, that's not a great thing to want to have. Basement apartments. I have a teaching buddy who lived in a basement apartment. By the end of 2 years in a basement apartment, she was ready to move out, and she moved into a basically condemned house that wasn't properly certified because she was so desperate to get out. I can't see my parents, family members, or friends renovating their properties to create 3 units, never mind 4. And I'm not just talking about NIMBYism here. Even if they wanted to do it, the costs are not being itemized. What is the cost to meet the fire codes, the flooding codes? Because here's an example. From the second example I've got, I'm worried about the ability of the town to ensure that the codes are met and substandard construction is not used. Because again, in Toronto, where we have all these condo towers sitting empty, and they're not affordable, believe me, just because they exist doesn't mean they're affordable. The windows are falling out and people are getting hurt Final Destination style. Not great. So 2 years. It took 2 years for the town to issue compliance orders for a substandard, non-complying new build next to my grandmother's house. It caused repeated flooding, drainage because of grade and drainage problems. We complained several times, and the owners of the building who bought from the house had to sue the builder because the property was sold without the code infractions being identified. So what's to stop this from happening over again and again through every town neighborhood if these complexes are built? Furthermore, this does lead to an increase in traffic in residential areas, and if we look at the plans, ignoring any concerns about ghettos aside, because again, my generation is suffering from a severe mental health crisis and crowding them all into one spot is not going to be great for that. Restricting parking to one space is unrealistic. I mean, we saw the plans. There's one space per unit. This assumes that we live in a place where no one has to drive. Oakville's transit is strapped. Like, where does it stop again? Half the routes got collapsed or canceled. Not everyone owns a car. We definitely can't afford to own a car. We can't own a house. We can't own a car. But even without the restricted parking, no yard space for family living. And if you were at the Midtown meetings, you know what a problem that is, because they're saying, hey, yeah, complete communities. Here's the little asterisk point. It doesn't come with the G.I. Joe accessory kits, and it also doesn't come with activities. Those will have to be done outside Oakville. Those will have to be done outside this, outside that. Then why do we have a complete community? Anyway, but furthermore, Oakville also has this bylaw about 3 hours of parking on a street currently. What's that going to do for the on-street parking nightmare? Are we going to ticket everyone who can't fit into the one driveway? And finally, third, concerns about Sheridan College. If this is meant for students attending Sheridan, then that should be Sheridan's concern and run by the college. It shouldn't be offloaded onto... Because here's the thing. I'm not going to pretend for a second that I care for the NIMBY's point of view. I couldn't care less about, that sort of property value on that level. Like, if you live in a mansion or where your mansion will go from 8 million to 6 million, I couldn't care less, frankly. But it doesn't guarantee affordable housing because, again, the developers, unless they are required to, will not make it affordable. It's not going to be affordable unless there is a law saying you have to make this within a certain funding bracket. There's not going to be the affordable housing. Why do you think every condo here says exclusive or luxury condo? Because that's where the money is, or they think the money is there, at least. They would probably get more renting out cheap units to students, but hey, I'm not a guy who builds houses for a living. I'm a teacher. I already know I'm a little less than stable. But yeah, here's a couple of things. The high turnover of student housing means the level of maintenance is not guaranteed. Any high turnover area, maintenance can and will be substandard. I mean, my residence when I was in university was a glorified broom closet with 70s carpeting, and the basement looked like something out of Saw. Look, so here's the problem. It could affect the surrounding areas. My grandmother's house is in Kent Gardens. Now, that house is worth probably about 1 million, not even, probably 800, 600. And God bless the government for trying to do something about inequality with the whole luxury taxes and that. But unfortunately, the way they've said it, it's not targeting the top bracket. It's targeting the upper middle class. So with the increase in the capital gains tax, we already anticipate a potential loss of value. Again, this is on an $800,000 home. I'm not talking about a $5 million mansion here. I'm talking about something that sells for less than a Ferrari. So I thought the plan was to gently densify in new areas where there's room for construction and growth nodes and corridors. Again, like it's been previously stated, it's not like we don't have the room. Again, the whole point of fighting the Greenbelt problem back when Ford was trying to raid the Greenbelt for space, there is the space. There's plenty of it. It keeps going to luxury condos, which are sitting empty. Gee, wonder why. So there is hope for a change of thinking on Midtown, family formation in Pride and Oakville as a hometown that prioritizes neighborhood community, and this is really it. The community and the environment, and it's been largely ignored. And my fellow young people, I do understand your concerns, but really, do you want to just pay rent year after year after year and never actually put it on any roots here? I get that not everyone wants a family, but surely you deserve better than that. But yeah, in a world where all of our green space is being chopped up, community centers, everything is paid now. It costs money just to socialize, it costs money just to live. We don't even have a decent bar or a nightlife here in Oakville. I'm just gonna spell that right out for you. People go to Toronto for that because we don't have it. And so the addiction and the mental health crisis continues, and you know what? It's not a big city problem anymore. See young men screaming on the corner of Cross and Trafalgar, screaming for help, lonely and desperate. And you know what? Here's a little true story today. Today was the start of Mental Health Week in Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board. Do you know what the gesture of mental health solidarity was? Sticky notes with affirming messages pasted on the lockers. Smile. Be the superhero in your life. Be the change you want to see in the world. And do you know what? The kids were laughing their heads off because they could see the profound insincerity of the statement. My fellow council, I respect all that's being done, and my fellow young people, I respect you as well. But we do need to find real solutions and not a hasty response from the federal government that is desperate to look good at our expense. And really, are we being bought so cheaply? 35 million? Heck, it might even be 25 million now. The amount seems to keep going down. But thank you above all for listening to my concerns. And I am hoping that we can find common ground on an issue that is affecting us all right now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the time you took to share those thoughts with us. Mr. French, there you are. Welcome back. Yes or no?
Well, I'm tempted to give you a 10-minute sermon on good manners, because there's been a lot of bad manners in the course of this meeting, with people presenting having been disrespected, not by council, who have done very well on that. In particular, I commend Councillor Dudek for her response to an earlier presenter. And to deliver a question like that as a gotcha, I really, I'll choose to believe that the delegate got carried away in his rhetorical flow. The answer to the question is yes, in fact, we're in very early stages of conversations with the Bishop's Advisory Committee on Buildings about possibilities of redeveloping a piece of the property to provide some sort of housing of social benefit. That's as far as it's gone at this point. And of course, the structure of the Anglican Church is that the bishop owns the building, I don't.
Thank you. And for the public, Mr. French's answer is not hypothetical, and it has been done already in Oakville in other churches. So I thank him very much for bringing that forward. We have no more registered delegations, and with the consent of the crowd, I'll confine the matter to table, and I'll take your silence for assent on that. Our rules are that for the chair to speak to a matter, he has to pass the chair. And I'm going to pass the chair to the acting mayor, Ward 5 Town Councillor Mark Grant. And I'm going to ask him to recognize me.
I believe our first speaker is you.
Thank you. That's very kind. I'm speaking against adopting the bylaws number 53 to 56, required to qualify for the federal government's Housing Accelerator funds. I thank staff for the work they did at Council's direction to draft the bylaws necessary to satisfy the Canadian government's two controversial conditions for improving our application for a Housing Accelerator Fund grant of $25 million over the next 3 years. The first condition is to allow 4 living units per property as of right. Council based its direction in January on the fact that 3 units as of right is already the law in Ontario and in Oakville. I said then, the difference between 3 and 4 units as of right is the one-time $25 million grant we won't otherwise get to offset some of the costs of growth. We don't like the cost of growth on the back of the property taxpayer. I'm going to speak more about that in a second. The second condition is to permit 4-story apartments everywhere within 800 meters of Sheridan College. Since January, I haven't found any evidence that all municipalities with campuses are required to permit 4-story apartments everywhere around their campuses. That doesn't feel fair to me, probably not to the residents either. Curiously, this requirement does not come with any money for any new units created that way. I don't know what that says about this requirement, but it doesn't inspire confidence. In January, Council and I thought Canada's government could be a good partner in the housing supply crisis that we're in. Now, it seems maybe partner isn't what the Canadian government is trying to be. Maybe boss is what they're trying to be. So what kind of boss do we want? I would like a boss who treats everyone fairly. So it's hard to feel good that Quebec has a Housing Accelerator Fund agreement free of conditions for its city's share of the Housing Accelerator Fund money. This is the deal the federal government has refused to give Ontario. That doesn't feel good either. I remember the federal government opened our population floodgates without preparing anyone to deal with the surge in housing demand that logically followed. They also failed to make the necessary investments to set up our new immigrants for success. We need immigration for our country to thrive and survive the demographic gaps in our population. This is a serious economic emergency level of problem, but it has to be done responsibly. So it's better late than never that the Canadian government's new budget has billions of dollars for essential infrastructure to support building more homes faster. But they're requiring a 3-year freeze on development charges in Ontario to get that money. It's troubling that they're imposing conditions that show they don't understand how municipalities work in Ontario and how growth infrastructure is paid for. There is more, I'm going to try to illustrate that problem with a very simple example. There is more than $12 billion worth of infrastructure needed over the next few years to meet Ontario's housing targets that is not yet included in the development charges of Ontario's cities. Freezing development charges means that the federal government's roughly $2 billion offer to Ontario could cost us as Ontarians more than it's worth to build the infrastructure needed for the housing everyone knows we need. It would be a net loss to take the money. This is a tragedy because money is desperately needed to build the infrastructure to support the homes we need to solve the housing supply crisis the Canadian government itself created. So it's alarming that the Canadian government has a top-down attitude when dealing with 9 out of 10 provinces. It's alarming that they appear to be unwilling to listen to provincial and municipal concerns and evidence to let us help them make their budget and their housing programs work efficiently and effectively. I want to put the HAF grant, the Housing Accelerator Fund grant, that we will lose in the context of our financial health, which is to say, our ability to do without the grant. We don't need to risk our neighborhood's livability for the small amount in the Housing Accelerator Fund grant. We already pay more than $30 million a year of the cost of growth that we used to be able to collect in development charges when growth paid for growth. And that was 40 years ago. We also pay about $45 million more per year than our per capita share of the costs of being a lower tier in Halton Regional Municipality. With all of those expenditures, with all of those calls on our finances, we are still Ontario's municipality known for our top financial strength. And the province's new Bill 185 restores some of our ability to collect for the cost of growth in development charges. For as long as I've been your mayor, I've been proud of the way our council has agreed that it's important to have town finances strong enough to be able to stand up to adversity. We are strong enough to be able to protect the livable community we're building here. We call our unanimously adopted land use official plan the Livable Oakville Plan. This plan is the most important thing we achieved in my first term as your mayor. The essence of the Livable Oakville Plan is to conserve the character of our stable, established neighborhood streets where we live. We do that by directing growth and intensification to growth nodes and corridors that have greater access to transit and where we have the required infrastructure planned for efficiency. No one has applied to use their almost 2-year-old right for 3 living units as of right on their property. If we agreed to 4 as of right, I do not believe our housing supply needle would move. The only needle that will move is the needle of public dismay and frustration at the perceived threat to the stable, established neighborhood streets where we live, the thing the Livable Oakville Plan set out to conserve. So thanks to our financial strength, we don't have to accept a bad deal. We can say no to the HAF conditions. We can say yes to the Livable Oakville plan, and I hope we do. Our proven plan has been generating and will continue to generate enough growth to meet our share of the nation's housing needs and targets. We have the missing middle and gentle density across our town. Our town is we also already have, as I said, 3 units as of right. All of this is mentioned in our staff's very fine report, which I recommend. It's a long report, but it's a long report because it needs to be in order to lay out all the facts for you. If you care about this issue, let's remember in our housing crisis, we're going to hear about these things again. I recommend everybody read this report by the staff because it is a fantastic piece of work, pulling together everything and telling you what we have. Because, you know, if you don't get out a lot, and some people don't, I mean, before I became mayor, when I became mayor, the first thing I noticed from being out more, around town more, is there's a lot more to our town than I thought. And I find that most people are surprised at how many parts there are to our town. We are a full-featured community. There's, you know, we've got everything, maybe except 60-story towers. But we even have towers. And believe it or not, we've had towers since the 80s. So I want to return to my remarks. I got a little carried away with a digression there. I beg your pardon. Our other mayors are telling me that we will not be the only municipality to reject the HAF conditions I'm speaking against. I cannot accept the federal conditions because they have no prospect of solving the housing problem that threatens our country, our province, and our town. And I'm talking about threatening our prosperity, which is what's at stake. I hope rejections of their conditions will motivate the federal government to be more collaborative with provinces and cities. Housing is the prerogative under the Constitution. It's the jurisdiction under the Constitution of provinces and cities. The federal government is inviting itself to the party, but not in a nice way so far, because it's just been a little too top-down. We need a government of Canada that will collaborate and truly partner with provinces and cities with consultation and respect. We need a government of Canada that makes policy based on study of the facts on the ground. The federal conditions for accessing the Housing Accelerator Fund and the new infrastructure funds in Canada's budget are not evidence-based policy. We need to work together so we can solve the housing supply crisis without wrecking the livability we're known for and proud of. The 2 official plan amendments, bylaws 51 and 52, that are before us tonight only align our official plan with the Ontario 3 as of right legislation as we must. I'll support those. It is the zoning bylaws 53 to 56 before us tonight that I will vote to refuse. I hope that together we can continue our record of being a leader in the province and the country at increasing the housing supply. And thank you very much for your attention to my remarks.
Thank you. Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Acting Mayor.
Could I beg your pardon? Mr. Acting Mayor, Mr. Chair, I forgot. I'd like to move that comments from the public with respect to the town-initiated official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments be received, and that council approve the official plan amendments 2024-51 and 52, and refuse the zoning bylaw amendments 2024-53, 54, 55, and 56 that are provided in the report tonight. And now I really am done. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. I fully agree with what is being proposed. Quite often when people purchase their homes, they do their homework. They look and see if there's any future developments planned for the area. What is the area zoned for? Today, we have the possibility of saying to those same individuals who purchased their homes with the knowledge of what the area was zoned for, the zoning is going to change from what they knew at the time of purchase without their participation in the decision. When responding to the media about the Housing Accelerator Fund decision, the mayor advised the decision will ultimately rest with the town council, balancing the need for increased housing supply with preserving the character of existing neighborhoods. Preserving the character of our existing neighborhoods is exactly what this is all about. Our official plan, Livable Oakville, was designed to direct growth to certain areas in the community to preserve our stable residential neighborhoods. The plan was designed with a huge amount of public engagement, something that cannot be said of the Housing Accelerator Fund. It is also why we cannot compare ourselves to other cities or towns when referencing why they applied for funds and we do not want to. Oakville residents spoke loud and clear about how important preserving their stable residential neighborhoods when they supported our Livable Oakville official plan. I have specific concerns. One is affordability. It's been raised tonight, and rightly so. As I've stated before, not being able to stay in Oakville after you graduate from school and leave your family home is nothing new. My siblings, my school friends, my own children cannot afford to live in Oakville. This isn't even discussing home ownership. It also includes the rental costs. So if a modest Oakville bungalow is now selling for $1.5 million and up, to make a profit that the developers are accustomed to receiving, they would likely have to look at each unit being in excess of $1 million each to make it worth their while. Not exactly affordable. Legislation versus agreement. I previously raised the concern that we run the risk of changing our zoning permanently with no guarantees from the federal government that they will honor their part of the contract after the first installment. I raised this considering an upcoming federal election, one that may in fact result in a different party forming the government. The response to my concerns was it was a contract, and therefore it does not have any correlation to the party of the day. So I did a bit of research and found out that my concerns do in fact have merit. The Fraser Institute states, government contracts are indeed contracts. In the normal course of events, their terms may be enforced and the Crown held liable for a breach. However, government contracts are not the ironclad agreements they appear to be because governments may change or cancel them by enacting legislation. If democratically elected governments are to establish their own policies, they require the ability to make unilateral changes to agreements made by previous governments. Heritage. The provincial government has removed some very crucial pieces of legislation to enable development regardless of a heritage designation. An appeal of local decisions are now appealable to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Some of our designated homes are situated on some very large properties that are important to maintain in conserving the heritage attributes of the designated property. I have serious concerns that when a person purchases a designated home and they want to change the existing property to accommodate 4 units, they can appeal to the OLT, the Ontario Land Tribunal. The hearing may in fact be favored towards the request for an increase in density, as the developer will maintain that they're merely following the lead from the province and the federal government to increase the housing supply. Once again, housing supply not necessarily affordable. In conclusion, I continue to state, no amount of money or enforced legislation will have my support to alter our stable residential neighborhoods, or the character of our community. The province legislated 3 units as of right throughout our community. We had no say in that decision. I do give the federal government credit that at least they're giving us the opportunity to decide how we want to intensify and grow in our community. We don't have to accept the money or the changes to our zoning in our neighborhoods. There are some on council who have expressed concern that we might miss out in securing funds from the feds. So let's look at why this proposal is being suggested to communities. Canada's immigration numbers have increased substantially without the proper planning for housing them. So once again, decisions are being made at the federal or even provincial level without our input. And who has to pick up the pieces when those decisions go sideways? The cities and towns do, not the federal government, not the provincial government. You and I suffer the consequences. I have serious concerns when we are changing people's zoning rights without providing them sufficient input, not just contacting their municipal representatives. Something this important should be through a referendum on a municipal ballot. If we as a community can vote on a referendum on billboards being permitted, surely we can provide the opportunity for them to vote on something that will permanently alter their stable residential neighborhoods. I will not support any changes to our zoning bylaws without the community being part of the process, regardless of the price tag that is being proposed or by a federal government possibly refusing to honor the funding of our infrastructure as they had previously committed. 4 as of right is 4 as of wrong, and changing an entire neighborhood due to a local educational institution not providing sufficient housing for their students is wrong. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I actually just have a couple of questions of staff of the report, if that's okay. And then I'd also ask if we can separate the amendment that Mayor Burton put together so that we vote separately on items of the bylaw 12.4, 12.5, 12.6, which would be 54, 55, and 56, if we can separate those.
All things are possible.
Thank you very much.
This is your time to ask questions.
Perfect. Thank you. So just to staff, on page 34 and the top part of 35, where we talk about the applications we've had with the three units, and then I think which were 0 over the past years, and then the next line sort of says, through the zoning bylaws to permit 4-unit dwelling residents, it is not anticipated that the town will see a substantial increase over and above what is already being experienced. So if we're already experiencing 0 and town staff are saying we're not expecting a substantial increase over 0, are staff really saying that if we pass the 4 units and the 4 stories that you're not expecting to really see any of these being built?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, given our experience with additional dwelling units and the building permits we've seen to date, we haven't experienced any 3-unit dwellings, and given that those permissions have been in place for quite some time, almost 2 years now, it's not likely that we'll see a substantive increase given permissions for 4.
Okay, so I'm correct then, that you're not expecting to see?
Correct.
Okay. And then just a question with regards to stories and what constitutes a story. I know when we've had, condominium applications, there's always been sort of a difference between what the height of a building is and what constitutes a story. And I know there's varying heights and that sort of thing. So I've driven around and I've seen houses that I swear would be as tall as some 4-story buildings being built. How are we gauging what a 4-story constitutes? And I guess, would there be similar single-family homes right now that might be able to be constituted as a 4-story apartment building?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I understand the height in the zoning bylaw is measured from at grade, and there's a cap on building height for a single detached house within the zoning bylaw, which is lower than what a 4-story building would permit. I'd have to look into the zoning regulations to determine what the actual heights are, but I can tell you that a 4-story building would be taller than a single detached dwelling.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Well, I might as well just get right into it, because I think I've had an incredible experience interacting with many of you. I sent an email and got a few responses, which was great, because it really does bring me back to the fact that Oakville does have the patience and the kindness to exchange ideas. And coffee with Mark and Derek touring through your building and your business was great. And I appreciate this, and I get the sentiment here. In my area where I live, we have 4 units. We have a 2-story, 6-unit building. We have, across from me are 4,000 square foot homes, and I'm in a 900 square foot semi. Our area is perfect, and I wouldn't change it for the world for anywhere in Oakville. So I'm less concerned about a lot of the comments that I've received just about what will transpire when these types of multi-unit and really multi-living space places are in a community. They can be quite nice and encouraging. I think we have to talk about the affordability issue, because we didn't get to this affordability crisis overnight, and any expectation that what we do or say is going to get us out of this overnight is misguided. So I wouldn't want to chalk anything we do here tonight, or the province does tomorrow, or the feds do 3 days from now as going to be a silver arrow in fixing this. I think the affordability issue is real, and it is not like anybody in this room has experienced before. Adjusted to inflation, the median income for an individual 25 to 54 in Toronto in 1990 was $54,300. In the 2021 census, the same 25 to 54-year-old, the median income was $54,600. So it's in 30 years almost, it's $300 more is what the actual income is. In 2010, the average home price was $586,000. In 13 years, it's doubled. It's now 1.1 million. So one thing we all have to agree on right now is what people are making and what they can afford now has never been seen in our lifetimes. Never. It just hasn't. So I'm not missing out on the fact that there's a bunch of young people here saying, hey, we got a problem. And there's a bunch of people who own homes. I own a home. Again, my wife and I couldn't afford the home we live in right now if we had to buy it today. So I get that, and I'm attuned to that, and I think it's a problem that is going to have multiple arrows to bring it down. Tall and sprawl is not a good way to use infrastructure. And part of the argument with gentle density is you put it in where infrastructure exists already. And that includes community centers and schools and libraries and pipes and water and roads and sidewalks and parks. It's already there. So how do we use that and not have to pay to build it new? The gentleman had mentioned there's a lot of land, let's use land. That costs more to develop there because you have to bring all those things to those places because they're not there already. So there's a fiscal element to gentle density and mixed use density that you do not get with tall and sprawl building. And we have not done this right over 30 years. We've got it wrong. And I think a lot of smart people, we had one here speaking to this council, Dr. Mike Moffat. He's a big advocate of this is one thing you can do. Former chief planner in Toronto, Jennifer Keesman, has been out. She's speaking in Burlington next week. This is what you need to do. The province's own housing task force said, this is one thing you can do. Now, there's a paradox in saying that because we've heard from our staff saying it's not going to be done, because it's too expensive, and there's a number of reasons why. And we live in a town where really people don't need this, and they don't want to do this because they want to live in single-family homes here. So the idea that all of a sudden our communities are going to change, like some of the pictures we've seen, I think just really, it's making policy based on fear rather than fact. And the mayor told me this once, and I'll never forget it. When you make policy based on fear, not on fact, it always costs you more, and it rarely delivers a better result. So that's what we're doing here a bit. I just want to leave leave it with this, because I'm thinking of these young kids and I'm thinking of my kids, and it's not like we're not making these decisions for today. As Councillor Nanda said, the building that's going on now and there was 25 years ago in the making. So a lot of the decisions we're going to make today is going to be for 25, 30 years from now, and how that's going to start to transform our communities back to a place where many municipalities have done this for decades. Montreal is one of them. So I would like to support all of the four as of right and the 4 stories too, just because I think it's the right thing to do. I get that it's probably not going to happen, and that's fine. But I've had great conversations with everyone, and I do understand, and I sincerely appreciate the sentiment that you have and understand it, as a homeowner too. So I get it. But I do want to say and I've changed this so it's a little more gender neutral. It's society grows great when older generations plant trees knowing they'll never sit in its shade. And I think we need to do that for these kids and for my kids. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
There we go. Thanks very much. I wondered if our staff would be able to put the amendment on the screen for everybody to be able to see. I'm going to support the motion that Mayor Burton's put forward, but I'd like to amend it by incorporating some additional wording. And if we can get this up, then everyone can see it. That's Mayor Burton's and there. Okay, it looks like we can maybe we can almost see the whole thing there then. Oh, we can't see the whole thing. Great. Okay, so I'm gonna read it for everyone's benefit, and then I'll speak to it, and I hope to be relatively briefer. But before I read it, I want to make sure that everyone recognizes that this is a work that came through discussions with my colleagues to my right here, Councillors Knoll and Grant, as well as Councillor Lischina, and I want to thank the Mayor for a couple of tweaks to a few words here and there, as well as to our staff who have been great working with us on all of this. They have gone through all kinds of hoops, bringing forward all of the HAF materials, and so I want to thank them for their work. They don't get enough thanks. They get beaten up by everybody, and it's not fair to them that they get beaten up because they're being asked to do the work that we're asking them to do. And so I hope that they take a little bit of solace recognizing that we appreciate the work that they do. The addition that I want to add in here is, whereas the Livable Oakville Plan has an urban structure that directs where and how the town will grow and directs the majority of growth to an identified system of nodes and corridors, and whereas the Trafalgar Road corridor is identified as a special policy area in the town's official plan that is intended to provide for the redevelopment of specific properties to provide transit supportive intensification, whereas there are policies specific to Sheridan College within the Trafalgar Road corridor that permit intensification, building heights up to 18 stories in certain locations, as well as mixed-use and single-use buildings, including residential uses and student residences. And whereas Council passed a motion on January 22nd, 2024, in response to the HAF program, that staff be directed to bring forward a zoning bylaw amendment for Sheridan College that will bring zoning regulations into alignment with the town's official plan. Whereas it is appropriate to look at solutions that enable the accommodation of residential uses, including student housing, on the Sheridan College property, and where Sheridan College has been in discussion with the town regarding the future of their property, including opportunities for residential uses, including student housing. Therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to create a Sheridan College Housing Task Force with the objective to enable, advance, and accommodate the development of residential uses, including student housing, on the Sheridan College campus, and 2, staff be directed to create a work program in alignment with ongoing HAF initiatives to bring forward any necessary recommendations, including programs, official plan, and/or zoning bylaw amendments to achieve the findings of the Sheridan College Housing Task Force to expedite the delivery of student housing on the Sheridan campus. I agree with a lot of what all of my colleagues have said so far, including Councillor O'Meara. We do have a real shortage of housing. We need additional housing. We have an affordability problem. It's needed, especially for students in the Sheridan College area. Students need a variety of types of housing depending on their individual situations. But this is not a new problem for Sheridan College. It's become much worse, but it's an issue that predates the pandemic and it goes back several decades. And so I believe it's possible to have all these types of housing that students need on their campus. There's a great variety of student housing types available across this province, and we should have more variety in Oakville. With respect to the 4 units as of right issue, I'll speak I'm not going to repeat what others have already said, but one thing that hasn't been spoken to is there are some provincial changes that are contemplated in Bill 185 that have come up recently, and it concerns me as it suggests removing some of the local control over how those extra units, 3 units or 4 units, get managed. And so adding an additional unit to something that our local community will have less say on concerns me. Second, I don't believe that either the 4 units as of right, nor the 4 stories around the Sheridan College area would create a material number of new units. I said this before and I'll say it again. I don't believe that passing it would materially create affordable, any units, affordable or otherwise, in the area. And so to create a material amount of housing in the area, I think we need substantial new housing along major corridors and in our growth nodes. And we have already seen examples of this. When our Member of Parliament came to our budget meeting and said we needed to change things around the corridor here, around Sheridan, I said we already have substantial new buildings that have shown up and will show up. We have 3 new apartment buildings, 2 across on Marlborough Court, and 1 right across on the west side of Trafalgar Road from Town Hall here. And there's another 200 units of rental building coming just on the other side of the street from Town Hall on White Oaks Boulevard. So there are substantial numbers of new apartment buildings coming. And yes, it will not surprise me 1 ounce to see some of the church properties in the area come forward with something different. St. Simon's was here today, and I welcome you, and I appreciate your discussion today. But you're not the only church that has raised the concept of redevelopment. The Presbyterian Church up the street has also raised the concept. There's going to be change in the area. We need the housing, and none of us should be shocked when it shows up. The initiative to bring forward a task force to work with Sheridan, I think, is an important one. It's perhaps one that we might have done previously, but I think it's time, given the HAF, to really give it a lot more time and energy. Councillor Knoll and I went and spoke with a number of the executive team member over at Sheridan. We had a very good discussion about their student numbers, about the number of international students. They are concerned about what the impact will be on the international student cap on their Trafalgar campus and their other campuses. And I think we will have to wait and see just what that means. But by my calculations, if they had several hundred more student residences on campus, it would greatly alleviate the issues around the Sheridan College community. I have been dealing with lodging houses and rental houses throughout the community for years, and they're still there, and I don't know if they ever will go away. But the team at Sheridan expressed 2 issues with student residence construction. One was the capital cost of building the initial building. Where does the capital come from? Does it come from the province? Does it come from the federal government? Or does it come from private equity? All of those are possible sources, and I think they all need to be explored and continue to be explored. But once a building gets built, there's a second issue, and it's the operating cost of a student residence. Building a student residence that is clean, affordable, and meets all the codes is really hard to do, and also at the same time beat out the price point of the $500 mattress on a floor in a basement. is a challenge. And it's a challenge that I think is going to require a lot more work. It's very, very difficult for the community to enforce the flop house, if you will, the 5 mattresses on a bedroom floor in a basement. Very difficult to enforce for a bunch of different reasons, and I'm not going to go into them because it's an adjacent matter. But for all these reasons, I look forward to working with Sheridan, and I think they will be as good a partner as they can be on this matter. They have been very good at responding to questions, and I appreciate their efforts. And so I'm going to pass it on to the next speaker, but thank you very much, everyone, for their input. It's been very appreciated by all of council.
Thank you. And before we get to the next speaker, I have a sense that we should ask the mayor if you see this as a friendly motion. Amendment, sorry.
Yes.
All right, then, Madam Clerk, when we were voting, given that we're separating the bottom parts,
Seeing the mayor sees it as a friendly amendment, we would vote on it as a whole, but every member, of course, has an option to ask for it to be broken into sections.
okay, we're already separating the bylaws.
Yes, we are. Yep.
Okay.
That's the mayor's motion.
Right, but Councillor O'Meara has asked us to separate.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right. Next, we have Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I want to first of all state that it's difficult to speak fifth because all the good points are taken. So in order to encapsulate what you just heard, I'm just going to say ditto, and I'll endeavor not to use my speaking notes or repeat anything if I can avoid it. First of all, I do want to repeat this. I want to thank the staff very much for the hard work they've done on this. Councillor Adams is absolutely right. They're often, they put all this work into something that turns out to disappear in a matter of a vote. And we did ask them to prepare this material. It was very helpful material, both to generate conversation and dialogue in the community and to help form all of our opinions and to bring us to tonight's vote. So thank you to the staff for your diligent work and for bringing us all the facts that we need to know. And thank you to my constituents, our constituents, Ward 5 constituents in particular, who filled our mailboxes every day with your comments and your feedback. We do appreciate it. For those of you who did not get back to individually, we attempted to send out form letters and such to indicate our position. Every letter was read, every position was taken into account. My comments are as follows. There's absolutely no question that there is a crisis, and it's an affordable housing crisis, not necessarily a housing crisis in my opinion, but an affordable housing crisis, and that has to be addressed. The question at hand tonight is, does this proposal tonight address our portion of the affordable housing crisis in Oakville? And the answer that I've concluded is no, it does not. This will not significantly, if at all, improve the circumstances in Oakville. It's been said many times tonight, we already have 3 as of right. I remember I chaired an affordable housing task force when I was president of the Housing Corporation many years ago, I think it was 2005, and almost every delegate that came before us at the region said, your answer is accessory units. Inclusionary zoning is the answer. You'll solve everything with it. And guess what? You know, these 9 years later, we're still facing the same problems. People aren't taking us up on the accessory units to any great extent. They're a great option, but they're not the answer to the question. The reality is that, you know, we've had this issue, and speaking of the Sheridan College one first, we've had this Sheridan College housing issue has existed since I joined council back in 2000. And to a large extent, it has been solved by, as Councillor Adams said, mattresses on basement floors, sometimes homes subdivided into 10 or 12 little cubicles, and that issue, so the issue has happened. There's been a shortage of housing in the community. Is this going to resolve that problem? I do not believe so. I think if somebody is faced with the option of renting a $2,500 unit renovated in somebody's house versus a $600 mattress on a floor, I think the answer is obvious what they're going to pick. The solution, I believe, to this problem is the one that is identified in our amendment. Work with Sheridan College to accommodate the housing on Sheridan property. As long as I've been on council, even before I've been on council, I've heard of Sheridan College continually talk about options for using their property. And I've seen proposals, and I've seen drawings, and I've seen renderings, and all sorts of things over the 2 and a bit decades I've been here, but nothing has ever been acted on. So maybe this is the impetus that we need to take in order to actually help facilitate that and contain the solution, hopefully most of the solution on the Sheridan issue to Sheridan. And I have to say, Sheridan is a fantastic constituent. They are a great asset to this community, and no way should we be vilifying them for this, because this is not of their making. They did not ask for this. They were as surprised as all of you were when this proposal came along. They were particularly horrified that their name got attached to it. So I must tell you that, as Councillor Adams said, we had a great meeting with them, and they've expressed a great degree of enthusiasm to work with us on the solution. I think I've adequately addressed Fours of Right. I don't think it's a solution. We're not seeing the uptick on what we have already. And I kind of feel, and with great respect for our federal colleagues that work hard in the House of Commons, this kind of feels like them asking us to do them a political favor by allowing them to check a box on a very important factor in the public opinion today. We saw it in our own public opinion survey that was recently released. The #1 issue in town is housing, affordable housing. It's the #1 issue across the country. Yes, the housing is under the Constitution, is part of the provincial responsibility, but housing policy can be driven by the CMHC, and it has been for decades and for many, many years. And I raise this because there was a period in time when the men and women came back from war in World War II, and we had a baby boom, and there was a shortage of housing. And the federal government, through the agency of the day, were the ones that really rallied the call and said, we have to solve this problem. And they found ways to incent development. They built a lot of development themselves, and they used some of that land that was available to actually create veterans' homes. In fact, some of you live in veterans' homes that were veteran housing that was built years ago. Certain parts of Ward 5 are veteran housing. Lots of Ward 3 is veteran housing, Ward 1. So there are other solutions. They're more complex solutions, certainly more expensive solutions, but I think more viable solutions rather than sticking young people trying to raise a family in the basement of a single-family dwelling. So, I also want to raise another point where the CMHC can come in handy, talking about solutions. In the late 80s and early 90s, the federal government had a Housing Now program, and that Housing Now program, and I think Mr. Bell or one of the gentlemen raised today the idea of more co-ops. So in that Housing Now program, the CMHC sponsored and financed co-ops being built across the country. There are a few here in Oakville. They were successful, and they can be successful again if they put the appropriate policy in place to help create housing opportunities that are meaningful, long-term, and affordable most of all. So with that, I want to say I'm going to be supporting your resolution tonight, Mr. Mayor, and the motion that Tom has brought forward that, as he indicated, was worked on by the Ward 5 and 6 councillors. And I look forward to it passing tonight and moving forward to look for better solutions in partnership with our provincial and federal counterparts to find meaningful solutions to this housing crisis, this affordable housing crisis that we all face today. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you. And next we have, on my list at least, Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor. I would just like to say that I was one of the 6 councillors back in January that did not support the majority of council's decisions regarding going forward on this journey of Fours of Right. And I would like to thank the residents who picked up the torch and started to make people aware of what was happening. And I really think hats off to everyone on either side that's coming out and speaking up, because that is true democracy. And I'm really proud that our councillor colleagues are listening and are listening to the constituents. And I thank them, for I can see there's a heck of a swing from where it started out in January. So that's all I need to say, and I just say thank you, residents.
Thank you. Councillor McNeice.
Thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor. I actually just have a question for staff, if I can. I think that's in order, yeah. So the Housing Accelerator Fund's essentially an action plan of 11 points, and 2 of them appear to be quite political and divisive, but there's still some meat on it. There's still 9 points, and I believe there's about 7 or so of these that will carry forward regardless of the funding. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our understanding in our conversations with CMHC is depending on how we move forward on various initiatives such as these ones, whether the town is eligible to continue to participate in the HAF program. But what we do know is that there would obviously be funding implications of the money that we would receive through the HAF program if the initiatives weren't passed.
Okay, I mean, just for more clarity, to be specific, I know we've already talked about a housing needs assessment report through the white paper that I think the mayor was referencing related to affordable housing. We've added, I believe, additional things that can help affordable housing that's not on this list, with a plan to get some of the framework for a community planning permit program that can almost mandate certain percentages of affordable housing, as well as inclusionary zoning and community improvement plans. And I think those are the things that are actually going to make the development community deliver a certain percentage of affordable housing. Is that fair to say that these are still going to move forward? Not to mention we've got Midtown in here, as well as development at the Bronny Go.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct, Councillor McNeese, that Council did approve the initiation of affordable housing tools such as the CIP, CPPS, and those other alphabet letters that you've mentioned. So that work will continue regardless of the federal funding, and we made sure that the budget request would be adequate for that in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Everything that's been said tonight, ditto. With respect to the comments, and there have been some very good in-depth comments, and some things I didn't realize looking at my notes that I missed. However, I want to thank all of you who came tonight, and just to reiterate, it's important that our communities come out and speak on behalf on a yes or a no with respect to all the issues that we're having. And right now we're under siege. A lot of municipalities are under siege with respect to development, and the development is we have a big one coming up is Midtown Oakville. To me, right now, it's almost like having a large city dropped in the town of Oakville based on heights and so forth. So that's another issue at another time that has to be talked about. What I really want to talk about, too, is a different slant with respect to as of right. As of right is very prescriptive. We don't have control over it. The control is taken out of our hands when it comes to as of right. So that is a challenge in itself, and to look to the future. The as of right, I don't know where this came from the beginning, because there was a ad hoc committee of the province who came up with 45 recommendations with respect to how we can speed things up and so forth. And I think this is one of the comments or one of the things that came forward. Notwithstanding, the as of right, again, takes the control out of the municipality, and now we're in a challenge to say, what does that mean? Okay, I look at pretty simple, the KISS concept. If I have a house, and I know my residents or my neighbors have homes, and they want to move out and they want to make money, so they sell their property to a developer. A developer comes in and says, okay, the single-family residential homes are basically getting dried up because of the cost and the cost of these homes coming in to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 million. So I can't sell those in the market anymore. Let me revert to building 4 townhouses or whatever units in a residential property. So I can sell those for 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. So you see where this is going. The challenge will be as time goes on, if as of right and developers come in, and I can understand they're in the business to make money. They're in a profit. They're not in a subsidized business. They're in to make money. So the issue will have to be is when we get to We will have restrictions and guidelines with respect to the development on single residential properties and what can go on and the size and so forth, understanding that. But the question will always be, and it will always happen, we'll have developers and owners challenge us through the C of A, Committee of Adjustment for variances. It will get creep more and more and more, and we're going to have issues and challenge with properties, property standards, and everything that goes with that. So to say the as of right, it takes it out of our control, and then we're going to have challenges down the road. So I'm not supporting as of right on the 4 units. Even at the 3 units we have now, is been how we say was already done. It was mandated, and we had no collaboration or discussion with the public. So we are now stuck with that. But to go to the 4th, based on money put on the table by the federal government, makes no sense to me whatsoever. It's almost like giving a candy and saying, okay, I got the candy, and now what? No. The 25 million or 30 million, whatever they're putting out there, in our budget and our official plan, which is our defensible plan for the town, it stayed the course. We've planned it out where our growth is going to be. Stay the course. Don't let these distractions distract you down the line. So I just leave it as that, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for coming out tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nando.
Thank you, through you, Acting Chair. First of all, I want to say the same as my council colleagues. Thank you to everyone, because it seems like this is such an important issue and everyone's passionate about it. And our team did an exceptional job putting this report together. And it is something important and something we should discuss to make a decision. One of the points that came to my mind was, and I'm kind of glad to see that I have a few council colleagues that were here 20, 25 years ago when North Oakville was being planned. And one of the questions that came to my mind is, all those years ago when North Oakville was being planned, I'm assuming, and I'm not sure, but one of the reasons was that it could be affordable. So I'm thinking that when they were planning North Oakville and thought, oh, let's create more density on the north side, this will bring more people in and it will be affordable. Well, we're sitting here 25 years later, and it's probably one of the least affordable places to buy a house. So if I was 25 years, when I was 25 years younger, and I thought, you know, it's gonna be an affordable place to live, I feel blessed that I do live there, I have a home there. But if I assumed back then that by building more, it'll be affordable, well, I would be wrong. It hasn't happened. And quite honestly, when I came into this position, this was one of the first things I thought about. What was the reasoning behind Ward 7 and North Oakville being so densified? And it was supposed to be, I think, for affordable housing, but it was also supposed to be for quality of life. And one of the biggest complaints I get from my residents is the quality of life has gone down. Their kids can't go to school that's across the street from them. For at least a generation, at least one generation of my kids' generation, we had to take them to facilities and for sports and activities all to the south because we had nothing. And now we don't have enough schools, we didn't have enough facilities, and for that reason now everything is coming. It skipped a generation, and now some of my own children are leaving this education and going to post-secondary education, and now we're getting all those facilities that we need. But one of the biggest things I've seen is whether it was supposed to be affordability, that did not come. And I'd love to hear from my council colleagues who were there back then, that what the discussions were. Was it similar to what we're hearing today? And is that what residents were anticipating North Oakville was supposed to be? And then my other point is just to Sheridan College. I think if the federal government wants to do anything, they should give funding straight to Sheridan College and have them build all those homes that they want built. If you're asking us to do something in the 800 meters around, then I think the federal government can step up themselves and go straight to Sheridan College and say, if you build these homes, we will give you this funding. So build it, and they will come. So I think that's how I feel. And having 4 as of right and having these homes, as my colleagues have said, it's not the solution. Thank you, Acting Chair.
Thank you, Councillor G.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. So first of all, I still want to thank all the delegation for the presentation tonight. So I respect all the opinions you have, and your voice was hardly heard. So we've received hundreds of emails from concerned of residents expressing their opposition or favor to this proposal zoning bylaw amendment for 4 units as right at the Sheridan College housing area. I even got some emails from Ward 5 residents to invite me to visit that neighborhood to see what is going on and to understand the situation. But actually, it's not necessary because I have living in that neighborhood for over 10 years. So as my council colleagues have pointed out, this is very clear that this approaching may not effectively address this housing crisis we are facing. With the provincial government already permit 3 units per residence lot in 2022, which is without any consultation with the municipal government and our residents. So now federal just a simple adding 1 more unit, especially with increased density and the 4-story building near Sheridan College, it may not affect the solution. So in addition to the housing concerns, it's not just only the numbers. Put 3 unit or 4 unit, turn to have 6 unit. We must think about the potential challenges related to the parking, access, traffic, safety, and even preservation of our tree canopy. These are very, very important facts that need to be carefully evaluated before processing any changes. So furthermore, it's more crucial that all levels of government collaboration closely on this crisis, the funding issues, and that the municipals are giving a strong voice in the decision-making process. After all, we are the one directly engaging with our residents and tackling housing issues on the ground. A balanced and sustainable plan taking into account input these municipals is very essential for the finding a lasting solution to our housing challenges. So as my colleague, Councillor Knapp said, so I urge the federal government and the provincial government, you should directly invest to the college, like Sheridan College, to help them to facing the students, the challenge for the residents. So this is something, therefore, so I'm not favor in this proposal and stand in opposition to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Azat-Thiel.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Grant. So I'm going to try and ad-lib this because there's been a lot of amazing comments made, and you don't need to hear me go on for 5 to 10 minutes. First, I want to say to Derek Zapp, welcome to the Residents Association. It's awesome that we have a new Residents Association joining the contingent of other RAs, and what an awesome job the group did to come out and delegate, not only through email, but tonight. So congratulations on that. I want to clarify a couple things. One is, when 4 as of right was introduced to council, one of the things that concerned myself was the lack of public consultation. It came out of left field, and as Councillor Duddick said, it is such a critical decision. It deserves and it must have the fullest level of public consultation. I appreciate that we, as a result of the vote that occurred, forced that there would be more public consultation. Candidly, not the level of consultation that I would probably have recommended, but it certainly brought awareness to a lot of people about the fact that the province dictated to us 3 as of right. The number of people who had no idea that it could be 3 as of right was shocking to me. And so some good came out of that because people understand that is an option for them if they're choosing to have income supplement in their home, if they choose to have family come together on their property. And there's lots of great information that the planning staff have put together for people on the town website. The phrase "as of right town-wide" was shocking to me. Local planning, land use planning must be a local decision. And that's what you look to us to thoughtfully consider. And again, when it's town-wide, it's like a hammer. There's no precision to it. There's no step back and think about, would this fit? And as our town has evolved, if you take a drive, there are lovely areas that have a diversity of housing, and it's working. But there's a thoughtfulness once you're established to how you would change that. And I think that is something that rests with us as a council to step back and ask ourselves, are we providing that leadership and direction? I want to thank Mr. Bell, wherever he is in the audience, and I think he had a couple helpers. When you brought forward those alternatives, I am known for saying, you can bring us up your problems, but also bring us some solutions. And thank you for those alternatives. When Councillor Giddings and I moved a motion to include the development of a gentle density strategy with criterion on commercial areas, it was exactly what we see as an opportunity for additional housing that benefits both the landowner and the community. It doesn't upset the apple cart all at once. It enables people to have rental accommodation, different diversity of housing, and I'm hopeful that that work will continue. In terms of the Sheridan College resolution tonight, I'm pleased to support my council colleagues. I think it is the right decision to continue to have a discussion with Sheridan. I'm supportive of my council colleagues' comments in regards to funding directly to the college to support student housing is critical. I also want to reinforce that every neighborhood, old and new as we evolve, deserves to put livability at the heart of it. You chose Oakville for a reason. The future residents will choose Oakville for a reason. So let's be careful as we evolve to be thoughtful about how they too will come to love this town. And that is about thoughtful land use planning. And we will have to evolve, but it cannot be with a hammer. It must be thoughtful through your input. And I love Councillor Duddock's comments about a referendum if we ever have to go back to this 4 as of right. And finally, I want to speak to the young people. It is incredible the clarity that you bring and the passion to this. And we will continue to make progress. And there were some solutions tonight that help make progress. We didn't get in this hole overnight. We're going to have to work our way through it. I hope you will continue to bring ideas and solutions to the table and know that we do care and that we do want to make a better future for you. I just don't see this as the viable step for Oakville at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lushina.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Grant. I have to tell you, this has been a very frustrating 6 months. I don't like to attend meetings just because they're meetings and people want to hear themselves talk for hours on end. And I'm speaking to my council colleagues. I'd like to give you try to get you to recall that back in I believe it was January, when Mayor Burton was, had a very heated debate with MP Pam Demoff discussing the Housing Accelerator Fund. He had told all of us that he had spent months talking to the minister's office about the terrible deal that they were giving us, not giving straight answers, constantly changing their positions. And yes, there was that heated debate. A lot of us heard for the very first time about some of those concepts. And, you know, I take exception, Councillor Algar, because you were the one who said, what is the town doing or to apply for the accelerator fund? And then Councillor Hazel-Theo, what are the efforts regarding the housing accelerator fund? Had Mayor Burton actually finished his conversation with the minister at that time, and he told them that we were getting a raw deal, the reason he's changed his mind for us to go through the next 6 months is because some councillors decided that they wanted to make sure that we have the money from the government. And we went through all of this through angst and frustration of how many hundreds of residents and community right across from all over, not just Ward 5 and 6, but more areas, obviously the 4 as of right. I agree that the 3 as of right was not a well-known thing, but for 6 months, there's been angst and frustration. And if you go back to your videos back and when we had that discussion with MP Pam Demoff, you would have seen what Mayor Burton was talking about. So you know, it's nice to hear all these things, but how much time and energy have people from the neighborhood spent calling their councillors, telling them this, when this could have actually gone nowhere because we were having a bad deal right from day one. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. And second time speaker, Councillor Algar.
I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak a second time. First of all, a comment to Councillor Nanda. I have over 3 bankers boxes of stuff from OPA 198, started in 2000 until 2006, basically. So anytime you want to have a look at it, I'd be glad to drop them off at your house. To my councillor, Natalia Lischina, I'd just like to set the record straight on a lot of things, especially since she targeted me. That in fact, the meeting was not in December. I don't know what meeting you were at, but the meeting was, I believe, January or November, I think, if you look back. And I'm also, just so you know, that Housing Accelerator Fund initially didn't have a thing in it about 4 as-of-right units. That came later, and that's a big, big difference. And I hope everybody understands that, and because I want to make sure it's well understood. And the other thing, for the mayor's motion tonight, I would ask for recorded votes on all part of it. I think it's very important, and I'm really pleased with what he has put forward and what he's saying no to. Thank you.
So I've got a second time speaker, Councillor Lischina. Just a reminder, we're not doing cross debate at this time.
We're not, but just quickly, it was a bad deal from the beginning without even having that. So the mayor was working on behalf of the whole community, and yet it was councillors who pushed us forward.
Okay, we'll button it up there. Okay. So, Councillor Haslett-Thiel, again with a reminder that we're not doing a cross debate.
So thank you, through you, Acting Mayor Grant. I have no need to debate this because had we been informed about the ongoing negotiations, we would not have had to have asked the questions in the public realm that we did. Though I absolutely appreciate having learned that Mayor Burton was making those efforts on behalf of the town, and as we heard tonight, a good decision is about to be made on behalf of the town, and so I think we should take the higher road and say that we all have listened and we all understand, and as agonizing as it can be to sometimes have this occur, healthy democracy takes time. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to get to the vote in just a second because I have this and I'm allowed to speak. Sean? Oh, Sean. Okay.
Sorry, I just want some clarity because we're reading through the bylaw here and I just want to be sure we've got the right ones that are separated, because it looks to me like 12.3 and 12.4 say the exact same thing. They both say to permit 3 additional dwelling units affecting various zones. So I just want to be sure I'm correct on what I'm voting for here.
And our mayor will make that clear for you.
Councillor O'Meara, the Livable Oakville plan applies to much of Oakville, most of it, but there is also a separate official plan called the North Oakville East Secondary Plan.
That's all I needed, Your Worship. I'm aware of that, yeah. Okay, so it's for both of them.
So the result is there's 3 pairs of bylaws. The first 2 are the official plan amendments to those 2 that bring us into conformity with the province's legislation, which we must do. The second and third pair deal with the 4 as of right and the 4-story.
Okay, perfect. And then just one last question to staff. Have we signed any agreement with the federal government right now about this?
Councillor, under the federal government's rules, we can't tell you that.
Do we need to go in camera then? Because I'd be happy to do that.
No. Still can't tell you. Look, when the federal government has you sign an NDA, you've signed an NDA. So,
so we've signed an NDA?
I had to sign an NDA in order to negotiate with, look, Councillor, I don't think that this line of inquiry helps in any way to move a decision one way or the other.
Well, I guess I wouldn't know, so thank you.
Shall we continue forward then? All right.
Sorry?
We're good? Everybody's done?
I think we have to go ahead.
Yes, good. First, I just want to mention that it hasn't been stated enough that we probably have the best municipal staff in the world in Oakville here. With everything else that our planning staff have had to deal with, we kept throwing things at them about this. With our discussions over the motion that Councillor Adams brought forward on behalf of all of us, we threw that at them almost last minute, and they came back with something even better. So really, I'd like to thank our staff for that. And also, let's get to, instead of more speeches, let's get to the vote. So, we are looking at, yeah, if you would share. And it'll be a recorded vote. Now, this would include the friendly amendment from Councillor Adams.
Yes, Acting Mayor, this includes all 4 sections.
Okay.
And are we breaking any of this out?
We are separating the bylaws on behalf of Councillor O'Meara.
So we'll vote on number 1, 3, and 4, and vote on number 2 separately?
No,
I'm not fine with it. I want to vote in favor of the 4 units and the special advisory around and the special area around Sheridan.
Right.
I want to vote for that, which I don't believe anyone else will, which is fine. But I also want to support the rest of it because it's important. So I'm going to be different on 2 elements of here than everyone else, and then I'm with everybody on the other stuff.
That's what we're working on right now.
Well, it's his right to separate things.
Yes.
I was trying to ask what you wanted a recorded vote on. For example, do you want a recorded vote on receipt of the comments from the public? Item 1.
The point, what I really want is that everybody puts their DNA of whether they're for the 4 as of right or against it. So I think,
Okay,
I
why
think
don't
our
we-
acting mayor sorted that out.
Why don't we separate everything individually then?
Well, if we take them for what they've said, it's sufficient to separate out bylaws 53, 54, 55, and 56. Those are the ones that deal with 4 stories and 4 as of right.
Okay, that's fine. Each one then. That's good.
So then we just, yeah. Yeah, we'd need to make that a 2A, 2B then, or whatever you're working on now. 3? Okay, perfect. So we're going to separate, all in favor of the motion separated those number 3. So that'd be number 1, number 2, 4, 5, and I believe now 6 would be the friendly amendment we have from Councillor Adams. All in favor?
Of what?
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Acting Mayor, if we could just, what I heard is there's a separate vote on number 3,
Yes.
and then we can lump 1, 2, 4, and 5 all together.
Right, plus.
Nope, number 3.
Okay. All right. All in favor of number 3? All opposed? Okay, sorry. We're doing a... Perfect. We'll do recorded vote in, I guess, calling names. Perfect. All right. So number 3, we'll do yea or nay. Councillor O'Meara.
In favor, yes. I vote for number 3. Yeah.
No.
Sorry, okay, I didn't see the word refuse in there. Okay, I apologize. I vote against number 3.
Councillor McNeice.
4.
Councillor Duddick.
4.
Councillor Chisholm.
4.
Councillor Hassett-Thiel.
4.
Councillor Giddings.
4.
Councillor Elgar.
4.
Councillor Longo.
4.
Mayor Burton.
4.
Councillor Knoll.
4.
I am 4. Councillor Adams.
Yes?
Councillor Luciana.
4.
Councillor Nanda.
4.
Councillor Shi.
Yes.
Excellent. Now, the rest of the motions. Recorded vote again? No, we don't need it? We'll just take it as listed. Okay. All in favor of the... Excellent. I'm going to hand this back to you now.
All right, Council, I hesitate to ask you this, but would you like a short recess? And would you like to give a motion to go past the hour out of an abundance of caution?
Your Worship, I'll give you a motion to go past the hour.
Thank you. Is there an objection to going past the hour? 1, 2, that's close. Going past the hour carries. All right. The next item is the 2024 Heritage Grant Program recommendations. And our staff, Susan Shepard, is here with a presentation if desired. And otherwise, the motion is to approve the funding allotment as attached. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If nobody has any questions on this, I'd just like to thank staff and the committee for their time and effort on this. And over the years, we've seen just over $1 million go into heritage properties, and that represents a $6 million total investment from the owners of these properties. And we look forward to doing this again and again, because it certainly makes a difference to heritage property owners.
Councillor Giddings, is that you moving the item?
It certainly is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Duddick?
Just like to echo Councillor Giddings' comments and thank him and the working group for all their work, especially staff who put considerable time and effort into organizing this. But I just want to give a little commercial break that maybe Councillor Giddings and Councillor McNeice, as the representatives on the Oakville Heritage Committee, may be bringing forth a recommendation which I would fully support to increase the funding to that Heritage Grant Program, because as you can see, it's oversubscribed and very, very much appreciated by the owners.
Thank you, Councillor Duddick. Councillor Chisholm?
You caught me here. I'm not ready for it. The question is, Susan, maybe help me out here. With respect to the grants that we provide for all these repairs and changes and so forth, do we have repeat customers? Is there any stipulation how many times you can come to the committee for grants?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, there is no restriction on being able to apply year after year. In fact, for responsible property ownership for a heritage property, we strongly encourage owners to make a 5-year plan for their maintenance schedule. The grant program is all about making sure that heritage properties are well maintained, and there is no restriction about property owners applying year after year. We love to see their properties being maintained.
And my second question with respect to if there was a cost or an expenditure, say $5,000, is the intent that the homeowner would do a 50% to trigger the grant with the town? Or would it be a full amount by the town?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Heritage Grant Program is always 50-50. The property owner has to kick in a minimum of 50% of the grant. In many cases, they end up paying significantly more simply because we don't have the funds in the grant program to fully support their project, but all funds are gratefully received by the applicants.
Great, thanks, Susan, appreciate it. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. May I put the vote? Is there an objection to Councillor Giddings' motion? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, Councillor Giddings' motion carries. Thank you, Councillor. The next item is the report, which I recommend heartily to the public, not just to councillors, the Bill 185 Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act 2024 and proposed Provincial Planning Statement 2024. We have a presentation if desired, but the report is fulsome and detailed, and what we're looking for is that the staff comments, including in the report, be submitted to the ERO per their respective requirements, and that the report be forwarded by the town clerk to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Halton Area MPPs, Halton Region, City of Burlington, Town of Halton Hills, and Town of Milton, Conservation Halton, and Credit Valley Conservation. Councillor Chisholm?
I'll move it, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Adams?
I was going to move it as well, but I also wanted to thank our staff for the very thorough work that they did in reviewing it. It's a complicated piece of legislation. It is, if you go and look at the actual details that go with it, it's pages and pages of material. It's quite the omnibus. And so I appreciate the readability of the report that our staff have given us.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hazard-Thiel.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. I just have a couple questions. Can you just clarify on the pre-consultation? There's a comment about the 40-day period to, I think, to go to OLT for a non-decision. When I read it multiple times, I might have been getting very tired. I just want to be clear. I know that pre-consultation is no longer going to be allowed to be a requirement, but with CPP, are we allowed to still have the 40-day period to consider the application if we choose to go to CPP?
I guess it's looking like the director is going to field this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Sibel is online, and if she has an answer for council, maybe that would be the best way to describe the question with respect to the CPP.
Thank you, Director, for identifying the staffer who will help us out. Sibel.
Yes, hello, good evening, Council. Through you, Mayor, the legislation is suggesting that pre-consultation would not be mandatory. And it's with respect to the zoning bylaw, and the legislation would similarly apply to a community planning permit system. So it would be that we wouldn't be mandating the pre-consultation, but it could still occur on the request of the applicant.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification. My other question is around public notice. The section in the report talks about notice and our changes in regards to not having a paper in the traditional sense. I'm wondering if staff, I don't know if it's CAO Closey or someone can answer, have we ever attempted to do a sign up for town notifications and to get emails for people? Because when I look at this, we're assuming they're going to go to the website, or the notification, will be in the Globe and Mail. Has there been any other strategies in the past that I might not be aware of to try and create a public notification database?
I did consult with staff on that matter, and we are just starting up a sorry, I'm losing the word. People can subscribe to get notices, but it's maybe not as refined in terms of a specific matter. So it is something that's starting up, and I'm sorry if there's someone from staff that would like to respond. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Sybil.
Madam CAO.
Am I on? Can you
You're
hear me?
on.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry. Actually, I think Sabelle has answered the question quite well already. We are looking at strategies to try and develop a notification and getting it down to specific types of things, a range of things that you could subscribe to. So those strategies are being looked at now.
Thanks very much for that. And my final...
I would also add that as part of the public engagement strategy that's coming forward, we'll expand on some of those strategies a little bit more. I think that program's coming forward in the fall at the latest.
Thank you for that. And then my last is, two last ones, just clarifying. So residents associations could retain party status, but they could not appeal. Is that the takeaway on Bill 185 in terms of third-party appeals? I'm seeing nods. I've got that correct? Okay,
Yes.
Good. Got one correct tonight. Thanks so much. And then my last is a thank you, because I always do appreciate the effort you put in and the thoughtfulness. And on page 19, it was music to my ears where you talked about the importance of parkland in Midtown. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ilger.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I see finance sitting at the back, so I do have a question just to get clarification on Bill 185 and what this will do for us at the town from a revenue point of view. Because the last CAO update I saw, I think we were now waiting for 27 million for the province to make us whole. And I'm just wondering, with this, if this Bill 185, what changes? We're still waiting for that one check, which keeps growing every month, but we haven't seen it.
Through you, Mayor Burton. So I can't answer your question, Councillor, about being made whole, but certainly the phase-in, that is something we are currently flagging for council and for residents, that would be gone under this proposed bill. So that would be one item we wouldn't need to be tracking because we'd be collecting that full amount of our DCs.
So currently, like our DCs were frozen, correct?
Through you, Mayor Burton. So the way that the phase-in works is the rate that we set for our DCs is phased in through a number of years. So that portion...
Isn't it 25% a year?
It was 25%, I think, the first year, and then each year after that, it's 5% closer to your actual rate. So I think we're at 90% now, Matt? Correct.
So with 185 and the development charges, though, that means we can put more stuff to put in the development fees, correct?
Through you, Mayor Burton, it's not about putting more items into the development fees. It means that the rate that we're collecting is the full rate that's been calculated through our DC background study.
Okay, can you explain a little bit more about that to me?
Through you, Mayor Burton. So the way that when we build our DCs, we come up with a calculation to determine how much we're charging. There's a residential amount depending on the unit you're doing, as well as there's a non-residential portion as well. What the previous legislation did is it took that rate that we were charging and it discounted it based off of which year you've been in since your DC bylaw was passed. That discount is proposed to be removed, which means we'd be able to charge that full rate that we had calculated.
Okay, that is good news.
Correct.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Elger. All right, we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Chisholm for this item. Is there any objection to Councillor Chisholm's motion? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. Councillor Chisholm's motion carries. Thank you, Councillor. Now, we have a confidential discussion item, and as I understand it, Councillor Duddick might be willing to provide us a motion on this confidential item. Councillor Duddick? And councils, you have the motion in front of you in your agenda. Is there any objection to Councillor Duddick's motion? Madam Clerk, there's no objection, and Councillor Duddick's motion carries. And what council has just passed is that staff be authorized to proceed in opposition to the appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal filed by Format Lakeshore Inc. in respect of an application for a zoning bylaw amendment applicable to 42 Lakeshore Road West, in accordance with the recommendations of the confidential report from the legal department dated April 23rd, and that the town solicitor and chief administrative officer or designates be authorized to negotiate a settlement of the appeal if the applicant is interested in doing so, in accordance with the recommendations of the confidential report from the legal department dated April 23rd. Council, I now call your attention to the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee minutes from April 23rd, and the motion is to receive those minutes. Councillor Giddings, it looks like you're obliging us. Thank you very much, sir. Council, is there an objection to Councillor Giddings' motion? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, Councillor Giddings' motion is successful. Thank you, Councillor. Would somebody like to move the motion that we rise and report? Councillor Shi, you haven't been in the minutes tonight. Is there an objection to Councillor Shi's motion? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, seeing Councillor Shi's motion is successful. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on confidential items, confidential consent items 5.1 and 5.2, public meeting 6.1, discussion items 7.1 and 7.2, confidential discussion item 8.1, and the advisory committee item 9.1. May I have a mover and seconder for this report? Councillor Lischina and Councillor Longo. Thank you. Is there any objection to the motion? There being no objection, seen, the councilor's motion is successful. Thank you to both of you. I call for any new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature, and I'll turn to Councillor Knoll after I express condolences for my rapidly disappearing voice.
I will share your condolences. Just a quick reminder to everybody, if you have not yet saved the dates of June 21st to 23rd, I want to remind everybody that that is the return of the Oakville Family Rib Fest. So I hope that everybody will come and join us at Sheridan College on the 21st to 23rd of June. 100% of the net proceeds go to local charities, and we're very proud of our friends at the Oakville Trafalgar Rotary as well as the Oakville Lions for being the sponsor organizations this year. It's shaping up to be a terrific festival with lots of food opportunities, and if you're like me and don't eat pork, you've still got opportunities with beef ribs, chicken, and other non-meat products. That doesn't sound appetizing. Delicious, delicious non-meat products as well. So please come out, no matter what your food preference is, have some fun for the day, meet your neighbors. Sheridan College, June 21st to 23rd. Hope to see every member of council there at some point over the weekend.
Thank you, Councillor. You make it sound very attractive. I'm told they might be good. I haven't been brave enough to try them yet, but all right. I need a motion and a second for the consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councillor Grant and Councillor Elger, thank you. This is for all the bylaws as listed in the agenda, except for the refused bylaws 2024-53, 54, 55, and 56. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection seen, the bylaws are considered read and adopted. Guess what? We finished the meeting and all the work that was in it before we actually went past the hour, but thank you very much for being willing to pass that just in case. And that ends the meeting. It's been great working with you.